The uncle announces Yuna's arrival at the mansion.
Yuna peeks through the opening door with wide-eyed curiosity. Yuna is amazed by the lush indoor garden.
Yuna wonders if magic stones power the mansion's greenery.
The uncle welcomes Yuelina to her new home.
Yuna prepares to meet her unknown husband, the Grand Duke. Maids whisper insults, calling the new Duchess a southern barbarian. The staff mockingly speculates about Yuna's appearance and sass. Yuna reassures her uncle despite the servants' obvious hostility.
Yuna prioritizes her tribe's safety over her personal pride.
Yuna's radiant greeting leaves the judgmental maids completely speechless. A maid realizes the Duchess is far from a barbarian.
Stunned servants compare Yuna's beauty to that of a goddess.
A dark voice wonders if Yuna is really his wife.
The staff reacts in terror to Theo's sudden bloody raggle.
Covered in blood, Theo claims he just finished hunting. Theo reaches out a blood-stained hand to his new life.
Theo introduces himself while staring intensely at the startled Yuna.
Theo bluntly declares that there will be no wedding ceremony. Theo darkly mentions that past wives either fled or died.
Eulith explains the couple will live in separate rooms.
Theo's secretary Eulith advises Yuna to adjust to the principality.
Eulith directs Yuna to a small attic in the tower.
Yuna is shocked to learn the other floors are emptied. Yuna feels isolated as the tower's sole resident. A hand swirls a glass of amber liquid. Theo drinks alone, brooding over his recent encounter with Yuna.
Eulith confirms he placed Yuna in the isolated attic tower.
Eulith questions Theo's unnecessary bloodbath and harsh greeting.
Theo views his cruelty as a warning against romantic expectations. Theo intends to lock Yuna away as a forgotten duchess. Yuna sits alone in the dark, dilapidated attic car. Chibi Eulith sighs, planning to call for assistance soon.
Theo wonders if his grotesque display brought the Duchess to tears.
Eulith begins to report on Yuna's unexpected reaction. Theo stops mid-drink, surprised by the report he is hearing. Chibi Yuna laughs joyfully, unaffected by her surroundings.
Yuna's room glows with a magical warm light.
Yuna reaches out toward a pile of glowing magic stones. Yuna marvels at the incredible warmth provided by the stones. The scene shifts to the tropical shores of Luhai Island. Yuna's father forbids her from marrying a total stranger. Yuna explains that winter is threatening her ill-prepared people. Clenching a scroll, Yuna declares her mind is fully made. Luhai's residents panicking as a sudden cold wave hits.
Legend speaks of magic stones that provide warmth in winter.
The Emperor's deal is the island's only hope for survival. Yuna's father reminds her she is the sole tribal heir.
Yuna accepts her duty to protect her people at any cost.
A younger Yuna smiles peacefully amidst a field of flowers. Yuelina remains steadfast in her goal to save her people.
Yuelina clenches her hand, resolving to handle the challenges.
Yuelina reflects on her uncle and the kindness of Eulith.
Yuelina recalls the bloody Theo and his surprisingly warm hands.
Flashback shows that Luhan warriors are the most respected citizens.
Eulith suggests Yuelina use this time as an adjustment period. Chibi Yuelina happily anticipates getting along with her husband. Yuelina reaches for a bowl of her precious crystals.
Yuelina suddenly trips while carrying her basket of magic stones. Yuelina panics as her valuable magic stones begin falling. Yuelina lunges desperately to catch the falling magic stones.
Yuelina notices an unexpected second door inside the room.
Yuelina winces as she recovers from her sudden fall.
A large, glowing full moon shines in the night sky.
Theo is startled to find his wife out on the balcony.
Yuelina explains her clumsy attempt to catch a magic stone.
Close-up of Theo's bright blue eyes as he reacts. Yuelina holds her white nightgown close in her endowment.
Yuelina smiles radiantly, surprising her husband with her beauty.
A thought bubble indicates Theo is seeing Yuelina anew.
Theo stares intensely at his beautiful and glowing wife.
Yuelina looks down shyly while holding her white pass. Flashback, Theo regrets the blood that blinded his first meeting. Theo recalls noticing a sweet floral scent on his wife. Theo sees Yuelina as if she is surrounded by flowers. Theo observes how small and delicate his wife appears. Theo is mesmerized by Yuelina's long and feather-like eyelashes. Blushing, Theo becomes confused by his own romantic thoughts. Theo orders himself to treat her as a duchess in name. Theo resolves to keep his heart closed to this wedding. Yuelina looks at her husband with wide, innocent pink eyes. A text bubble declares that he will never love her. Theo decides to scold her harshly and send her inside. Shivering in the night air, Yuelina looks back at Theo. Theo turns away, struggling to maintain his cold demeanor. Theo is suddenly shocked by his own blunt outburst. Theo realizes he accidentally voiced his harsh thoughts aloud. A title card introduces the legend of the Saintess. A statue depicts the Saintess as a messenger of Daphne.
Glowing white feathers drift through a radiant golden light.
Flashback, Theo calls for his secretary, Eulith, 2 months ago. Theo questions the coincidence of intercepted letters about the Saintess.
Prophetic text describes sacrificing the Saintess with the red mark.
Eulith reports that Delkin is an imperial spy monitoring Eurylina. Theo smirks, noting he lacks the imperial marriage engraving.
Narrations describe the sacred and permanent nature of soul engravings.
Eulith mentions the tragic fates of Theo's previous 3 brides. Crumbling a letter, Theo reads about eliminating the past candidates. Theo suggests that the Emperor was the one who killed him.
Theo stands tall as the Grand Duke of the Phoenix Principality.
The Emperor's nephew recounts his reputation as a bloodthirsty warguin.
His mother died when he was only 15 years old.
He entered the battlefield as a Grand Duke shortly after.
In war, he found no room for fear or hesitation.
The black-haired Grand Duke stands resolute before his legion of knights. He screams in a blood-soaked fury during the heat of battle.
A skeleton hand clutches a bloody blade over a mountain of skulls.
His people view him as a monster, driving his wives to despair. One of his previous wives falls into a deep, dark abyss. Despite the tragic deaths of his wives, he feels no sadness. He decides to live out his remaining years feeling functionally dead.
The Grand Duke realizes he must plan against the Emperor's wishes.
He shocks his light brown-haired aide by suddenly announcing his marriage plans. The aide questions marrying a doomed woman, but the Duke identifies her as untouchable.
The aide remains worried while the Duke plots to defy the Emperor.
A bright moon shines as he questions her thin choice of clothing. On a dark balcony, the Duke meets with the white-haired Yulina. He resolves to act harshly to ensure the marriage remains unavoidable. Yulina nervously asks if His Highness is feeling cold in the night. He coldly claims immunity to temperature to maintain his heartless image. Yulina stares at him with wide, sparkling eyes and a deep blush. She is flustered by his appearance while he wonders why she looks away.
He hopes his attempt to appear intimidating and cold is finally working.
The Grand Duke calls out to Yulina as she hides her face. He points out the path to his terrace and offers her anything.
He intends to make her realize his absolute power within the Principality.
He steps forward, determined to deliver a final, frightening warning to her. He boasts about his ability to catch even the swiftest of prey. The Grand Duke looms over Yulina, staring intensely into her eyes. She is startled as he mentions her room's proximity to his M. A sudden gust of wind catches Yulina off guard on the balcony. She cries out in alarm as the wind nearly knocks her over.
He reaches out to grab her, realizing the situation is becoming dangerous.
The Grand Duke catches the falling girl amidst a flurry of flowers. They share an intimate, silent moment as she gazes up at him. He is surprised by how light she feels in his strong arms. A rare blush creeps across the stoic Grand Duke's face as they touch. Yulina quietly addresses him while he responds with a stunned, simple breath. He worries that his touch might have been unpleasant to her. He reflects on how his previous wives would have flinched in fear. He is stunned when Yulina offers him her sincere thanks instead. He recalls how he was a source of despair for his wives. To his subjects, he was nothing more than a figure of terror. He admits that he once personified fear and horror to everyone. He looks at Yulina's kind smile and remembers her face from before. A memory of blood-stained hands holding onto a pure, clean hand. He focuses on the vibrant pink glow in Yulina's hopeful lass. He decides to drop the act and give her whatever she desires. The Grand Duke asks if she is seeking a magic sen. Yulina gasps in surprise as he correctly identifies her secret goal. Yulina fears her marriage conditions might cause the Duke's dislike. She insists the Duke need not rush her magic sten. The Duke is perplexed by her sudden lack of greed. Yulina stands amidst glowing flowers, appearing delicate and deeply conflicted. He finds himself mesmerized by the potential of her words. Yulina contemplates leaving the castle and abandoning her mission entirely. He clenches his fist, determined to reject her every request. She asks for breakfast, catching him completely off guard with kindness. The two stand in the cool night, tension thick between them. A rare blush colors the Duke's face as he turns away. Yulina beams a radiant smile that lights up the darkness. Her request for breakfast echoes repeatedly in the Duke's mind. He stands alone in the garden, questioning his own feelings. They share a long, silent look that bridges their emotional distance. He considers her breakfast habits, comparing her to a white squirrel. The Duke wonders if he should gather acorns for his wife. Mistaking his silent contemplation for rejection, Yulina apologizes and retreats. She fears her attempts to close the distance are failing miserably. The Duke is left speechless by her sudden and polite withdrawal. He watches her closely, his stoic expression hiding a growing curiosity. The blushing Duke remains frozen as he continues to process everything. The aide complains about his master's sudden and early demands. The aide questions why the head chef was fired at dawn. He deduces that the Grand Duchess is behind these erratic changes. The Duke prepares for his scheduled lunch with the Grand Duchess. The aide encourages the meal as a step toward a bond. He adjusts his glasses, noticing the Duke's unusual level of focus. He hopes this marriage leads to a normal life for them. He decides that any obstacles to their happiness must be removed. The aide suggests sending Count Delkin far away on a mission. The Duke realizes this effectively isolates the Duchess from Delkin. Yulina learns of the Count's sudden departure to the Northern Wall. She sits for tea with her uncle, feeling quite uneasy. Her uncle asks a shocking question regarding her marriage's consummation. Yulina turns bright red while vehemently denying any nighttime intimacy. Her uncle thinks her innocence makes her useless against the Duke. He resolves to coach her through the process of seduction. Yulina trembles as she is burdened with solving the refugee crisis. Her uncle warns that her current approach is failing to impress. He tells her the Duke is not fond of her owl. He demands she seduce him quickly to secure their magic stones. He suggests wearing revealing clothes, gesturing wildly with his hands. Alone, she repeats his scandalous advice with a massive blush.
Her uncle shouts about flowy, fluttering clothing from the hallway.
He leaves her with a final warning to remember his words.
A beautiful day begins over the castle's lush green courtyard. Yulina stands on the balcony, reflecting on her uncle's harsh words.
She realizes the air is turning far too cold for her.
The Duke approaches and drapes a heavy cloak over her shoulders.
He turns his head away, blushing slightly at the close contact.
Yulina blushes while wearing the Grand Duke's oversized heavy cloak.
The Grand Duke observes her with a calm but intense gaze.
He suggests cutting the sleeves, but Yulina panics and refuses.
She argues that folding the sleeves works and cutting is wasteful. The Duke abruptly asks if she met with Count Delkin earlier.
He mentions Delkin's work assignment while secretly knowing her uncle's advice.
He recalls her uncle demanding she seduce him as quickly as possible. The memory of her uncle suggesting revealing clothes makes him pause.
He tells Yulina to ask him for anything she might need.
Yulina hesitates to speak, prompting him to ask why she's stalling. He thinks about showering her with magic stones if she cooperates.
A loud growl from Yulina's stomach breaks the silence between them.
They stand awkwardly as the sound of her hunger echoes out.
Embarrassed, Yulina explains she hasn't eaten since early this morning.
She shouts her apology with a face turned completely bright red.
The Duke blushes, wondering how a stomach growl counts as seduction. He finds her incredibly cute as she frantically fans her face.
Later, the Duke sits alone, contemplating a tiny, long-tailed tit bird.
His aide and physician watch him make a strange pinching gesture. David, the personal physician, is shocked to be summoned by him. David remembers his time treating wounded knights on the front lines. He reflects on how mental wounds are far harder to heal.
David considers the Duke's emotional scars the most difficult to treat.
He recalls the Duke always appearing indifferent and devoid of emotion. David assumes this sudden summons must be for a medical emergency.
He asks if the symptoms are severe, and the Duke confirms.
David urgently asks the Duke to describe what he is feeling. The Duke adopts a very serious expression while preparing to speak. Both the aide and the physician wait in tense, confused silence. The Duke claims he is raising a curse, startling the physician. He clarifies that he is raising a long-tailed tit instead.
He describes it as white, fluffy, adorable, and smelling like flowers.
The Duke is convinced this bird is casting spells on him. David asks for more specific symptoms as the Duke blushes deeply. The Duke slams his hand down, scaring the poor physician.
He shouts that he feels a constant urge to see it.
David and the aide stare at him in utter, speechless disbelief. The Duke continues his intense, rose-filled description of his symptoms.
David realizes the Duke is finally becoming aware of his emotions.
David stares at the blushing Duke, processing this strange new reality. David exclaims that the Duke truly has been put under a spell. He suggests showing the bird to someone else to check reactions. The Duke repeats the suggestion of showing her to someone else.
David explains this will help him accept his natural emotional changes.
The Duke agrees to David's plan after a brief, thoughtful pause. Surrounded by roses, the Duke finds the suggested treatment very reasonable. The scene shifts to the Duke's office as he works. The aide thinks he would have been affected too if true. The Duke calls out to Eulith to begin the next phase. He decides to take the Grand Duchess on a hunking date. The black-haired Duke orders Eulith to prepare thoroughly while the aide agrees. The Duke stops Eulith mid-exit, catching the blonde aide by surprise. He gazes out the window, noting the Grand Duchess is sensitive to the cold.
Eulith politely accepts the instruction while secretly feeling very anxious about the situation. A chibi Eulith worries if the Duke will allow others to dote on her.
Yulina is mesmerized by the beautiful scenery of the forest and the sparkling lake. She exclaims it is her first time seeing such a beautiful landscape before. Eulith notices her shivering and clutching her ornate purple and fur cloak. He offers her hand warmers for the cold, and she graciously accepts them.
Eulith explains they are approaching the Duke's hunting lodge used for the nobility.
Yulina reacts with surprise at the idea of being introduced to the nobles.
She worries her lack of etiquette and commoner status will cause them to dislike her.
The aide looks at her silently as she grips her cloak in distress.
Eulith mentions skating on the lake later, but Yulina is unfamiliar with the term. He promises her skates while a chibi bird skates in his imagination.
A large, rustic wooden hunting cabin stands amidst the snowy pine trees. Eulith invites the Grand Duchess to step inside the lodge. Her long, decorative cloak brushes against the floor as she enters the building.
Yulina is startled to see 3 noblemen gathered around a table inside the lodge.
A black-haired nobleman claims she is even more beautiful than the rumors suggested. The nobles laugh, suggesting the Grand Duke must be very pleased with his wife.
Eulith steps forward, demanding the men show the Duchess proper respect and manners.
The noblemen mockingly ask what they did wrong by calling a beautiful lady beautiful.
One noble whispers cruelly that she was sold for a pile of magic stones. He boasts about his own wealth while Yulina trembles in the middle of them.
A hand slams down on a table as the Duke's presence is suddenly felt.
The Duke glares from the shadows, noting how noisy the room has become. The terrified nobles look up to see the Grand Duke on the balcony above.
He descends the stairs while the men panic about their talk of siphoning magic stones.
When asked why he isn't hunting, the Duke coldly reveals it was just cancelled.
The Duke suddenly seizes the lead mocker by the neck with a glare.
He promises the group that none of them will leave the lodge unscathed.
He accuses the noble of stealing magic stones while choking him.
The Duke demands to know if the man has more stones than himself. With a violent motion, the Duke hurls the man across the room. He orders them to listen carefully as he looms over the fallen nobleman.
He offers to spare their limbs if they return all stolen magic stones.
He threatens to remove their heads if they ever spread rumors about her.
The nobles flee for their lives while shouting frantic apologies to the Duke.
Yulina sits alone on a plush red sofa, looking pale and emotionally drained.
She reflects sadly on never having heard such insulting remarks in her life.
She feels deep regret for being unable to defend herself during the confrontation.
Hearing a noise downstairs, she worries she has caused trouble for the dip.
The Grand Duke opens the door and enters her room with a stoic face. Yulina looks up in surprise and calls out to the Grand Duke.
She feels unfit for her title after being looked down upon by the nobles.
The Duke reaches out his hand, requesting to see her right hand.
Yulina responds with confusion as she stares at his open palm.
He explains that her hand appeared to have been injured during the incident earlier.
Yulina looks at her reddened palm while he offers a special healing ray wet.
The Duke applies a glowing blue healing magic to Yulina's hand.
Looking at her with concern, the Duke asks if her hand hurts.
Yulina remains quiet as she observes the Duke's intense focus on her.
Yulina apologizes, realizing the Duke was insulted by the nobles because of her.
She worries her presence ruined his high-ranking noble relationships, but he disagrees.
The Duke gazes at her intensely with his striking blue eyes.
He asserts that within the duchy, no one stands above the Grand Duchess.
The Duke holds her hand firmly, offering his unwavering support and protection. He promises to provide magic stones because of her status, regardless of rumors. Surrounded by flowers, the Duke maintains a gentle but firm hold on her.
A close-up shows the Duke emphasizing that Yulina is his Grand Duchess.
Kneeling before her, he tells Yulina she can do as she pleases.
Yulina resolves to feel confident and worthy of her title as Duchess.
The Duke continues to hold her hand in a supportive and comforting gesture.
Yulina pulls her hand away, blushing intensely at the sudden surge of embarrassment. Surprised, the Duke wonders if she is shocked by their permanent life together.
Yulina shifts the topic, excitedly asking if they are going hunting now.
She begins to undo her heavy outer cloak to reveal her hunting attire.
Yulina mentions that Ulysses prepared the specific hunting outfit she is wearing. She reveals a form-fitting hunting outfit with a corset and dark tights.
The Duke stares in shocked silence, a slight blush coloring his cheeks.
Yulina explains the custom-made outfit shouldn't be wasted, while the Duke hesitates.
The Duke realizes he has only ever seen her in loose-fitting clothes.
He recalls seeing her in baggy, oversized dresses she bought without trying on.
Yulina looks elegant in her new attire, surrounded by a soft floral aura.
Chibi Duke covers his eyes, desperately trying to regain his professional composure. Concerned, Yulina asks if the clothes look strange, but he quickly denies it.
The Duke asks about her hunting experience, and she enthusiastically claims she has some.
An illustration shows Yulina's hunting experience actually involved using a simple popgun slingshot.
The Duke smiles as she admits she mostly watched squirrels and weasels. He laughs softly, noting that hunting might be difficult without her popgun.
Instead of hunting, the Duke offers his hand for a walk together.
She happily accepts his hand, agreeing that a walk sounds very nice.
The pair strolls through a scenic path lined with vibrant rose bushes.
Yulina notes the scentless flowers, which the Duke explains are grown artificially.
Examining a pink rose, Yulina expresses her sadness over its lack of fragrance. Her mood quickly brightens as she suggests exploring another part of the garden.
The Duke is mesmerized by Yulina's presence and a sudden pleasant floral scent.
He realizes it is good the flowers are scentless so he can smell her. The Duke stands tall in his elaborate uniform, looking regal and composed.
Arriving at the lake, Yulina asks if this is where they use skates.
The Duke explains they can use sleds and skates once the river freezes.
In a thought bubble, he explains that skates are shoes with metal blades.
Yulina is excited for her first winter, though the Duke worries about cold.
With bright eyes, Yulina asks if he will teach her skating and sledding.
Surprised by the request, the Duke agrees to teach her whatever she wishes.
A close-up shows Yulina's hand is still slightly red from the earlier cold. The Duke regrets his oversight and not providing her with a warm cloak. He notices her gloves, which Yulina explains were a thoughtful gift from Ulysses.
Yulina explains that while the gloves are large, Ulysses' gift keeps her warm.
Yulina praises Ulysses' kindness, leaving the skeptical Duke in disbelief.
The Duke recalls Ulysses' history of ruthlessly purging the council. A sinister chibi Ulysses continues his underhanded and dirty tactics.
The Duke questions Yulina's assessment of his cruel, nagging aide.
Ulysses wonders why the room suddenly feels so cold.
The Duke decides to give Yulina a gift of his own. He believes a present will prove he is also thoughtful.
The Duke dismisses several expensive jewelry sets as inadequate choices. Sitting at his desk, the Duke ponders the perfect gift. He continues searching through his collection for something truly special.
The black-haired man reaches for a small red jewelry box.
He opens the box to reveal shimmering red teardrop earrings. Ulysses enters the room to deliver an official report. He confirms the offending nobles have been stripped of their reims.
The Duke remains silent, staring intensely at the jewelry box.
Ulysses feels annoyed by the Duke's sudden focus on being considerate. The aide realizes the Duke is jealous of his gift.
Ulysses is horrified that the Duke chose his mother's keepsake. He begs the Duke to reconsider giving away such a precious item.
The Duke insists on giving Eulina something meaningful and valuable.
Ulysses despairs over his inability to reason with the stubborn man.
The Duke decides to deliver the earrings to Eulina immediately.
A hand slides a heavy volume back onto a bookshelf.
The Duke stands alone in his room, clutching the gift.
He dismissively orders Ulysses to leave the room at once. Ulysses notices the Duke seems much more lively than usual.
Holding the red box, the Duke walks through the dark hallway.
He pauses outside the bedroom door after hearing a sudden noise.
The Duke enters and offers a quiet greeting to his wife.
Eulina stands in a revealing nightgown, looking completely caught off guard.
The Duke's blue eye widens as he processes the stunning sight.
He feels his body heating up, suspecting another magical curse.
Eulina apologizes, admitting she mistook the Duke for a servant.
Blushing, Eulina explains the skimpy nightgown is from her home.
The Duke orders her to only wear that outfit for him.
Flustered, the Duke offers the gift while suggesting a later return. Eulina quickly grabs his sleeve to stop him from leaving.
She insists that his late-night visit is not an inconvenience. The Duke concludes this new curse controls his very body. He tells her she is free to wear whatever she likes.
Wrapped in a fluffy robe, Eulina notices a sweet fragrance.
The Duke presents the ornate red box to the Grand Duchess.
Eulina is awestruck as she opens the gift for the first time.
The red teardrop earrings sparkle brilliantly under the soft room light.
She asks for confirmation that the beautiful earrings are for her.
Eulina is overwhelmed by the beauty and value of the gift.
She beams with joy while thanking the Duke for the earrings.
A soft, genuine smile touches the Grand Duke's stoic face.
The couple sits together in a warm, flower-filled atmosphere.
The Duke watches Eulina with a look of quiet, newfound affection.
Eulina looks up with a blush, lost in deep thought. The Duke reflects on their future as a normal married couple.
Relaxing by the fire, Eulina questions the Duke's high body temperature. The couple dines in the garden with their loyal staff attending.
Eulina's personal maid, Ray, stands ready to serve her mistress.
Ray reflects on volunteering for war to protect her sickly brother. In the past, the Duke personally taught Ray Anna fight. The Duke gives instructions to young Ray during a training session.
Rice's efforts eventually helped her side emerge victorious in the war.
After winning the war, Ray earned an honorary title of knight.
Ray noticed the Duke's lingering unhappiness even after their great victory.
She retired from the knights to serve him as a maid.
Eulina praises Rhys' skill while having her hair brushed and styled.
Rhys appreciates the Duchess's kindness as Eulina thanks her warm one.
The maid smiles, content with the gentle nature of her mistress.
Ray hopes that Eulina's presence will finally bring the Duke happiness.
The maid's mood sours upon noticing the Duke's upset demeanor.
Eulina tries to make conversation, but the atmosphere remains cold.
Ray internally fumes as the Duke ignores Eulina's polite garden remarks.
The Duke bluntly admits his dislike for flowers, infuriating the maid. He declines tea with Eulina, opting to work alone in private.
Ray and Ulysses are flabbergasted by the Duke's irrational behavior. Ulysses observes the Duchess, wondering how to bridge the social gap.
Eulina worries she has done something to upset her husband.
Ulysses pulls Ray aside to whisper a clever plan to her. Ray prepares to confront the Duke, while Ulysses suggests taking him outside.
Ray lures the Duke away with news of training ground issues. The Duke excuses himself from the table to investigate the matter.
Ulysses requests permission to speak privately with the Grand Duchess. He asks if Eulina received a gift from the Duke recently.
Eulina learns the earrings are a precious keepsake of the former Duke. Ulysses reveals the jewelry belonged to the Duke's late mother.
Eulina is stunned by the sentimental weight of the Duke's gift.
Worried, Eulina asks Ulysses for advice on how to proceed.
Ulysses leans in close to share a secret whisper with Eulina.
Ray and the Duke walk through the estate's quiet wooded path. The Duke notices Rhys' visible anger and questions her hostile expression.
Ray scolds the Duke for being distant toward the Grand Duchess.
He admits he believes Eulina dislikes him, causing Ray's shock.
Ray stares in disbelief at the Duke's complete lack of awareness.
She explains why his silent treatment would make anyone dislike him. The Duke asks if Eulina mentioned wanting to wear the earrings.
Ray asks if the earrings are keepsakes from Grand Duke Karenrez.
She realizes the Duke is sulking because Eulina isn't wearing them.
Ray suggests Eulina is simply saving them for a special day.
Realizing his mistake, the Duke is urged to apologize immediately.
Eulina rushes toward them, calling out to the startled Grand Duke. Breathless, Eulina catches up to them with the red jewelry box.
She mentions learning the earrings belong to his mother, surprising him.
Eulina tries to return the gift, feeling it is too precious.
The Duke clenches his jaw, thinking that his precious gift must feel like a burden.
He concludes that it is fine, as her simply accepting the gift is meaningful enough.
The Duke apologizes for the pressure, but Eulina quickly tries to explain her hesitation. He suggests she keep the earrings or accept another gift, but she disagrees. Blushing and distressed, Eulina insists that she really cannot wear the earrings right now.
The Duke is startled by her sudden and emphatic refusal to wear his mother's keepsake.
Eulina reveals the problem is that she has never had her ears pierced before. The blushing Duke is distracted by how small and cute her ears look up close.
Yulina admits she needs help piercing them, while the Duke questions the necessity of the act.
Yulina expresses a deep desire to wear the ruby earrings because they are so beautiful. She looks at him with pleading eyes, hoping he will help her wear the jewelry. Mesmerized, the Duke is struck by her beauty and her sincere desire for his gift.
Sitting together, Yulina confirms her wish to try wearing the earrings for the first time.
Yulina compares piercing to a needle-engraved mark given to her by her father.
The Duke is shocked to realize she is referring to the red mark of a saint.
Yulina admits she feels safe asking the Duke to help her with the piercing.
He leans in close, gently cupping her face to perform the delicate task himself.
Yulina's face flushes a deep red as she realizes how close the Duke has moved.
He tells her to bear with the pain while he finishes the piercing quickly.
Flustered, Yulina worries that her loud heartbeat will give away her inner turmoil.
A small needle carefully and precisely pierces the skin of her delicate earlobe.
Seeing a drop of blood, the Duke panics and asks if she is all right.
He offers to call a doctor, but Yulina insists she can handle the minor injury.
Yulina enthusiastically encourages him to finish piercing her other ear to complete the set.
The Duke agrees to finish the task after first stopping the minor bleeding. Yulina finally wears the ruby earrings and asks the Duke how they look. The Duke gazes at her breathless and tells her she looks truly beautiful.
Looking at her, he is suddenly struck by a haunting memory of his late mother.
A vivid image of the same ruby earrings flashes before the Duke's eyes. The Duke is overwhelmed by the sudden, painful recollection of his mother's final moments. A younger Theo stands in a blizzard, crying over a fallen white-clawed figure.
A close-up reveals his mother's face in the snow, still wearing the ruby earrings.
He reflects on the tragic sight of his mother lying in a place completely white.
The former Duchess, Karen Rose, tells her son Theo to protect the duchy in her absence.
Young Theo tearfully agrees to fulfill his mother's final wish to protect their land.
Karen Rose is remembered as a knight for the people rather than a typical ruler.
She is described as having died honorably for the sake of her beloved duchy.
Theo's desperate, childlike pleas for her to wake up echo through the cold snow.
He reflects on her life spent cultivating the harsh, frozen northern lands.
Holding a sword, Theo resolved that her sacrifice would never be in vain.
He sought strength instead of grief to protect the legacy his mother built.
Over time, only the ruby earrings remained as a tangible keepsake of her life.
For a long time, the Duke never gave the jewelry any special meaning. Suddenly, a wave of profound sorrow and long-buried grief washes over the Grand Duke.
Yulina beams with joy, her face glowing while wearing the precious ruby earrings.
The Duke softly calls Yulina's name as he gazes at her with newfound affection. Yulina looks up with a blush and thanks him for the thoughtful gift.
Holding his hands, Yulina asks the Duke to start calling her Yuna.
She laughs, suggesting he should use that nickname for her from now on.
Lacking a nickname of his own, the Duke asks her to call him Theo.
Theo holds Yuna's hands tenderly as they sit together indoors.
Yuna wonders if Theo considers her his true wife now.
The couple walks hand in hand through a tranquil, snow-covered forest path.
Theo pulls Yuna into a romantic embrace amidst a blooming drummond.
Theo and Yuna proudly present their newborn baby to the world.
Theo exhales a weary sigh, noting their long journey has just begun. A peaceful fountain flows within the estate's lush, sun-drenched gardens.
Ray explains the garden stays warm year-round using magical stones.
Without constant maintenance, the magically fueled weeds grow at rapid speeds. Yuna notes the scentless flowers, which Ray attributes to magical cultivation. Yuna fondly describes the sweet scents and nectar-seeking bees of her homeland. Yuna recalls her uncle's strict warning to avoid visiting Luhei Island. Realizing she can only send letters, Yuna hopes to return someday. Yuna wonders if her last letter arrived and ponders its contents.
A fine-tipped pen meticulously transcribes a letter in a stylized script.
Yuna imagines Theo as a fierce, blood-splattered warrior on the battlefield. She questions if her description of him as handsome was accurate.
Blushing intensely, Yuna worries her written praise was far too much.
Ray notices Yuna's distress, but Yuna claims she just misses home.
While Yuna wishes for time travel, Theo watches her from the bushes.
Ray realizes the Duke is barely hiding and wonders what to do. Ray coughs loudly to distract Yuna as the Duke ducks away. Yuna decides to be more careful with the contents of her letters.
Theo peers through the rose bushes with a focused, intense gaze.
Watching her, Theo realizes that Yuna truly misses her original home.
Theo mistakenly worries that Yuna wants to replace him with another husband.
Theo stands up abruptly, vowing that he will never allow a divorce.
Ray panics and blames the Duke's loud wrestling on a giant mole. Ray hurriedly suggests they visit a different garden to see new flowers.
Yuna follows excitedly while Theo watches them depart from his hiding spot.
Theo fears that their new closeness is being threatened by annulment thoughts.
Theo clenches his fist, determined to never let his wife go.
A powerful declaration affirms that Yulina is his one and only wife.
The Grand Duke looks ahead with a cold, unwavering expression of resolve.
Theo stands alone by the tall windows of the dark estate hallway. He gazes out from the balcony toward the distant, moonlit stone towers. A narration confirms that Yuna has resided in the duchy for months.
Theo observes that Yuna enjoys her meals and praises the skilled chef. From above, Theo watches Yuna and Ray enjoy their daily garden walk. Theo reflects on her earlier words, regretting her deep desire to return. He calculates the long journey to Luhei Island, dreading any separation.
Clinging to his chest, Theo refuses to accept a month-long absence. A sudden spark of inspiration strikes the Duke as he finds a solution.
Theo plots to build a replica of her homeland village within his lands. He recalls that the magic stones were the reason she first arrived.
Theo reasons that giving her more stones will ensure she never leaves. He vows to eliminate anyone from other empires who tries taking Yuna.
Theo is startled by a sudden knock and the sound of the name.
He hides the magic stones behind his back with a radiant smile.
Theo wonders if the tower stairs were too difficult for his wife.
Theo suggests Yuna could have taken his private elevator through the office.
Yuna smiles and explains she did not want to disturb his work.
Theo observes Yuna's considerate behavior with a look of realization. Theo blushes while imagining Yuna as a distracting, adorable little bird. Chibi Theo resolves to prove that he is a capable husband.
Yuna extends her hand and asks Theo to look at her discovery.
A cluster of bright green leaves rests in Yuna's open palms.
Yuna explains she found the plant and invites Theo to smell it.
Theo leans in closely to catch the scent of the leaves.
Theo's proximity causes Yuna to blush as her heart begins racing. Leaves fall into a teapot as Yuna explains their medicinal properties. Yuna fondly remembers the plant growing in the valley of her home. She recalls her father making her tea whenever she fell ill.
Theo worries that Yuna's happiness about her hometown means she wants to return. Theo plans to give Yuna magic stones as she asks for permission to leave.
Yuna explains she needs more tools to dry the tea leaves proper.
Yuna asks if Theo would like to accompany her on her errand.
Theo clenches his hands, deciding that being together is all that matters. A narration notes that Ulysses can handle the duchy's affairs for a month. Theo stands with renewed intensity and agrees to join her trek. Theo says he will have his aid pack for their journey immediately. Theo says the trip will take a month while Yuna is confused. The scene shifts to the bustling marketplace within the Grand Duchy.
Yuna mentions that Ray praised the delicious snacks found at the market.
Theo experiences a shock of realization regarding their actual destination. A new day begins at the massive stone castle under clear skies. Ray prepares Yuna for the outing, advising her to stay close.
Chibi Yuna excitedly promises to bring back treats for everyone.
Ulysses opens the grand doors and announces that the carriage is ready. Ulysses invites the Grand Duchess to board the carriage before Theo arrives.
Yuna smiles and thanks Ulysses as he helps her into the carriage.
Ulysses looks around frantically, hoping the Grand Duke arrives soon.
Sitting alone, Yuna wonders if Theo is still overwhelmed by his work love.
Yuna smiles, feeling grateful that they can spend time together.
Yuna fidgets with her hands, wondering if they might hold hands today. Theo enters the carriage and apologizes for keeping Yuna waiting. Yuna is visually stunned by Theo's polished and formal appearance. Theo tells her most of his work is finished for the day. Chibi Theo admits he wants to maintain the image of capability.
Ulysses gives the order to depart as the carriage begins moving.
Yuna looks at Theo, noting that he seems slightly different today. Theo is dressed immaculately with neat hair and a new scarf. The carriage travels away from the estate toward the town marketplace. Yuna mentions wanting to buy caramelized fruit snacks for Rai. The carriage hits a massive rock, causing a violent, sudden lurch. Ulysses quickly checks through the window to see if they are unharmed. Ulysses explains that the jolt was caused by a rock on the road.
The impact has thrown Yuna directly into Theo's arms amok.
Theo blushes intensely as his heart thumps loudly from the close contact. Yuna looks up at Theo with a shocked, blushing expression.
Blushing intensely, Yuna finds herself unexpectedly caught in Theo's firm embrace.
Struggling with the sudden intimacy, Yuna realizes she should probably let go.
Theo tightens his grip on Yuna's dress, seemingly unwilling to release her.
Ulysses shouts for the Duke, abruptly interrupting their quiet and romantic moment.
Panicked, Ulysses asks if they are okay while the couple remains entangled. Theo covers Yuna's ears, intending to pretend he didn't hear the interruption. Yuna giggles at his stubbornness and tells him that he should answer. Ulysses instructs the driver to proceed while worrying about the Duke's tea.
A lingering, soft contact maintains the romantic and tense atmosphere between them.
Sitting side by side, Yuna nervously reflects on her deep desire to hold hands.
Their hands rest centimeters apart as a sparkly, nervous energy fills the carriage.
Both blushing deeply, Theo decides that now is his perfect chance to reach out. Their hands finally touch, sending a shock of excitement and surprise through Yuna. A loud announcement from the aide confirms they have finally arrived at the market. Seeing their stiff behavior, Ulysses wonders if the couple had a recent fight. Stepping out, Yuna is confused by the market's eerie and absolute silence. The grand stone marketplace stands completely deserted, with only fallen leaves blowing through. Theo remains stoic while Yuna searches the empty, quiet street for activity. Yuna spots a nearby tea shop and excitedly suggests they begin there.
Ulysses notes to himself that their visit should not take much time.
Theo orders Ulysses to ensure all business is finished within 2 hours.
Ulysses panics because the Duke shut down the market, forcing everyone to wait.
Exhausted by the Duke's drastic demands, Ulysses releases a heavy, tired sigh. Watching through the window, Ulysses is pleased to see the couple looking happier. A shopkeeper bows with extreme deference as the royal couple departs the shop.
Yuna notes they have bought everything they need as they walk together.
Seeing a snack stall, Yuna pulls Theo over to explore it further. The young girl working the snack stall reacts with visible, wide-eyed shock. Theo realizes his presence has terrified the commoners watching from the sidelines.
Theo resolves to ensure Yuna never notices how much people fear him.
Yuna excitedly points toward the rows of colorful caramelized fruit snacks on display.
Yuna admires the fruit varieties while the young vendor remains frozen in place.
The girl gazes up at the massive and imposing Grand Duke with pear.
Recalling her mother's warnings, the girl fears she is being severely punished.
Yuna beams at the young girl with a warm and incredibly radiant smile.
Overwhelmed by Yuna's beauty, the young girl is momentarily stunned and speechless.
Yuna discusses her fruit preferences while the girl mentions her brother's favorite. Turning to her husband, Yuna asks Theo for his snack recommendation. Theo bluntly declares he will purchase the entire stock of snacks immediately.
Yuna laughingly protests that so many snacks will surely ruin their dinner.
Yuna chooses just a few snacks, leaving the young vendor feeling amazed.
Onlookers whisper about the Duke's fearsome reputation versus his currently love-struck behavior.
A bystander notes that the Duke looks more like a lover than a murderer. With trembling hands, the girl presenting the fruit skewers to the Grand Duchess.
Yuna thanks her for the recommendation and orders apples for the girl. Concerned, Yuna asks if the girl is unwell since she looks so pale. Yuna attributes the girl's distress to fatigue rather than the Duke's presence.
Yuna offers to manage the stall while the girl goes to get water.
Paralyzed by fear, the girl agrees to the offer and promises to return.
The young girl sprints away as fast as her legs can carry her.
Theo notices Yuna's concern and asks why she seems so worried. Yuna observes the empty market and wonders why everything is so quiet. Theo feels guilty as Yuna worries about the fruit skewer spoiling. Theo orders Ulysses to lift the blockade so Yuna stops worrying. Yuna is amazed as the marketplace suddenly fills with people. Yuna expresses shock at the crowd while Theo remains flustered. The fruit stall is surrounded by shoppers eager to see the goods. A boy asks for fruit while his father reacts with sheer care. Yuna offers a skewer to the boy who excitedly accepts it. The father nervously purchases a peach skewer while Yuna thanks him.
Theo tells the man to enjoy the snack, leaving him awestruck.
At sunset, Yuna tells Theo how much she enjoyed their outing. Yuna realizes people likely avoid Theo only because of his status.
Standing by the fountain, Yuna calls out to her husband.
Yuna offers a strawberry skewer and asks Theo to try it. A surge of romantic energy flows as Yuna holds Theo's hand.
Theo is momentarily stunned by the sudden and bold physical contact.
Yuna leans in close and asks Theo to take it back.
Theo blushes deeply as he accepts the strawberry skewer from Yuna.
Radiant with happiness, Yuna suggests they go out together again soon.
Under a golden sunset sky, Theo softly agrees to her request. The couple walks through the market together, finally holding hands. Back at the estate, Theo stands alone, lost in his thoughts.
Theo blushes while marveling at the fact that Yuna initiated contact.
Overwhelmed by the memory of the date, Theo hides his.
Theo decides to open a special wine to celebrate the occasion.
Ulysses enters the office and reports that all stock was sold. Theo acknowledges the report while remaining focused on his internal joy. Ulysses mentions Yuna's kindness while Theo credits her lead. Ulysses reports that Count Delkin contacted the High Priest of Daphne. Theo becomes serious as the conversation shifts toward temple politics. Ulysses looks concerned as the gravity of the news sinks in. A vision shows the eye of the storm atop a snowy peak. Narration describes the fierce, blinding snow rages at the mountain's entrance. The eye of the storm is revealed as a central magical anomaly.
A caption explains the Daphne temple sits at the storm's peak.
Only specific priests are permitted to enter or leave the temple. Ulysses reveals Delkin was seeking information regarding a potential saintess. Ulysses reports the priest believes Yuna might actually be the saintess. Forbidden texts describe the saintess as a radiant messenger of light.
Legend says red dots will appear on the saintess's ears.
The saintess is depicted as a divine savior needed by the world.
Ulysses reports that Luhay Island seasons changed after Yuna's ceremony.
Ulysses mentions a rock with Luhay inscript found near the store. The rock reportedly bore the word protection, though details are scarce.
Recalling his own time in the storm, Theo denies seeing it.
Ulysses plans to reach out to Luhay Island for more information.
Theo looks down with a grim, troubled expression on his face.
Ulysses heads down the stairs followed by a young blonde woman.
Ulysses' younger sister, Marin Ardante, asks if her brother is tired.
Marin mockingly suggests that her brother tried doing paperwork for once.
Providing a handkerchief, Marin asks Ulysses what the Grand Duchess is like.
Ulysses describes Yuna's kindness while Marin mentions their recent market date.
Marin's wild imagination conjures a vision of a perfectly romantic couple.
In Marin's fantasy, the couple shares a flower-filled and intimate embrace. Ulysses warns Marin to avoid being clumsy and to watch her words. A gloved hand knocks on the door as Ulysses announces his arrival. Entering the room, Ulysses introduces Marin as the new personal maid. The silver-haired Grand Duchess smiles radiantly while greeting her new visitor.
Chibi Marin is completely awestruck by the Grand Duchess's overwhelming beauty.
Marin bows deeply and promises to serve her new mistress faithfully. Yuna smiles warmly and expresses her sincere pleasure in meeting Marin. Marin internally fumes at her brother for failing to mention Yuna's beauty.
Marin asks the Grand Duchess for permission to personally assist her today. The original maid bows and departs to finish her training ground duties. Marin offers to help Yuna finish styling her hair at the vanity.
Marin carefully brushes through the long, shimmering silver hair of her mistress.
Looking in the mirror, Marin compliments the Grand Duchess's stunning appearance.
Marin compares Yuna's hair to snow, learning she never saw it. Marin suggests that Yuna walk with the Grand Duke when it snows.
Marin explains the romantic legend associated with watching the first snowfall together. A romantic couple stands together in a peaceful and snowy forest landscape.
Marin describes the legend as romantic while pinning a golden hair bow.
Reflecting on the legend, Yuna hopes for a long and happy life.
Yuna imagines a romantic future with Theo as a real couple.
Walking through the rose garden, Yuna calls out to Marin. Yuna asks Marin about typical recreational activities for people in the duchy. Marin asks for clarification regarding local festivals or famous dessert shops.
Yuna mentions Theo's work-related absences and her desire to explore together. Blushing slightly, Yuna admits how much she truly likes her husband.
Marin enthusiastically tells Yuna not to worry about her ambitious plans.
Yuna thanks her and suggests they explore the marketplace together next.
Marin suggests heading inside to decorate the empty rooms of the spire.
A man in formal attire watches the pair from the garden pathway.
Theo stands alone in the garden as Yuna calls out to. Theo asks if she is walking while Yuna mentions getting hair. Yuna declines Theo's walk to visit the spire with her new maid.
Marin is startled when the Grand Duke recognizes her as Ulysses' sister.
Marin bows and apologizes for the delay in her formal introduction. Theo asks if there are specific rooms she wants to decorate inside. Theo explains the spire's name while they look at the stone tower. Theo describes citizens preparing for winter once the spire's roof turns white.
Yuna resolves to invite Theo for a walk during the first snowfall.
Marin notes Yuna's progress while Theo remains in deep, silent thought. Theo bluntly declares that it would be better if it never snowed.
Theo expresses his intense hatred for snow and the color white.
The sudden, cold declaration leaves Yuna completely stunned and visually silenced.
Yuna hesitantly asks if the first snowfall isn't considered special anymore.
Theo dismisses the notion, claiming that all snow is exactly the same.
A heavy silence falls as Yuna processes Theo's unexpectedly harsh rejection.
Feeling unwanted, Yuna decided to head back inside the tower.
Marin quickly follows after her mistress, leaving the Duke alone. Theo stands in the garden, bewildered by his wife's sudden departure. Theo remains confused by the Duchess's unexpected and cold reaction. Ulith waits outside the office, requesting permission to present a report.
Theo grants his secretary permission to enter and deliver the news.
Ulith reports that the Grand Duchess has stayed inside all day.
Ulith notes Yuna focused on meals and cleaning within the tower. Slamming his desk, Theo demands to know why Yuna stopped walking. Fearing for his life, Ulith carefully considers his next words.
Ulith resolves to be completely honest with the Grand Duke. Ulith explains that the Duchess's behavior is a logical response. Ulith suggests Yuna is avoiding the Duke to prevent further conflict.
Theo acknowledges that Yuna's hair is white after Ulith's inquiry.
The secretary forces Theo to acknowledge that snow is also white. Ulith suggests Theo's hatred for snow implies hatred for his wife. Ulith clarifies that Yuna might interpret Theo's declaration that way. Ulith explains how people compare the Duchess's white hair to snow. Theo angrily insists that the two things are entirely different.
Theo argues that Yuna's hair is far more beautiful than snow.
Ulith emphasizes that the primary issue is the Duchess's wounded heart.
Ulith excuses himself, leaving Theo to brood over his mistake.
Theo resolves to clear up the misunderstanding with Yuna immediately. Theo marches toward Yuna's room, determined to set things right.
Theo knocks on the tower door, seeking his wife's presence.
The Grand Duke insists he has something important to discuss. Theo stands outside the room, requesting a face-to-face conversation.
Yuna allows him inside, revealing her bizarre and bundled appearance.
Theo is stunned to find Yuna wrapped in a massive blanket. Theo compares his bundled wife to a small, fluffy, owlish creature.
Theo asks for permission to sit and talk with his wife. Yuna refuses to unwrap herself despite the Duke's polite suggestion.
Yuna asks if her hair's resemblance to snow causes his hatred.
Theo suddenly reaches out and pulls the blanket from her hand. Theo firmly denies ever associating Yuna's hair with the cold snow.
Theo gazes into Yuna's eyes and calls her hair truly beautiful.
Theo takes her hand, promising that his words are sincere. The Grand Duke offers a sincere apology for hurting her feelings. Theo encourages Yuna to resume her daily walks without any fear.
Yuna is shocked by the apology and regrets her misunderstanding.
Theo admits he can't help but feel sorry for her. Theo admits he planned to prevent the Duchess from leaving.
Yuna asks for the specific reason behind his intense snow hatred.
Theo hesitates, showing vulnerability as he prepares to share his past. Theo reveals that the snow claimed the life of his lover. Theo describes the historical magic stone shortage that plagued his people. Theo and Yuna sit together while discussing the Eye of the Storm. The Eye of the Storm is a lethal, blizzard-prone mountain range. Duke Karenrose set out on a perilous journey to save her people. Theo laments that his mother never returned from the frozen waste. Theo explains how the snow buried his mother, leaving Yuna shocked.
Theo reveals he blames the snow for preventing her rescuing.
Theo laments his past helplessness while Yuna offers her heartfelt sympathy. Theo attempts to hide his sadness by claiming he is fine, Theo touches Yuna's earring, acknowledging her role as his duchess. A genuine and warm smile finally appears on Theo's face.
Theo suggests Yuna get some rest after their long talk.
The Grand Duke stops suddenly, appearing flustered and caught off guard.
Theo is embarrassed to discover they both secretly watch one another. Yuna boldly invites her husband to share a drink with her.
Theo is surprised by the unexpected invitation to drink together.
Yuna explains her belief that alcohol can provide comfort and relief. Yuna suggests alcohol grants courage, causing Theo's heart to throb intensely.
Yuna recalls having a small glass of wine while on a boat.
The Duchess looks radiant as she expresses her hope for courage. Theo agrees that sharing a drink is a very good idea. Time passes during a shimmering transition as Theo leaves the rear.
Theo returns with wine, worrying that he spent too much time.
Theo pauses to check his appearance in a nearby mirror. Theo resolves to return to the training grounds to regain his fitness.
Theo enters with champagne and apologizes for making his wife wait.
Theo finds that Yuna has already fallen asleep on the bed. A chibi Theo wonders if his wife is truly fast asleep.
Theo realizes Yuna is exhausted from cleaning the entire tower alone.
Theo reaches out to dim the light of the magic stone.
Theo decides it is acceptable to watch over his sleeping wife.
Theo stares intensely at Yuna, captivated by her peaceful sleeping face. Theo experiences an internal conflict over his urge to touch her. Theo notices a single strand of hair resting on Yuna's mouth. Theo justifies his actions by noting it is only one hair. Trembling, Theo convinces himself that a light touch is perfectly fine. Theo leans in close, hovering just inches away from her face. Theo panics, wondering if he is being inappropriate while watching her.
Theo considers this mental struggle harder than any torture he's endured.
Yuna mumbles about the cold and reaches for Theo's arm. Yuna snuggles against her husband, finding comfort in his warmth. Theo's mental restraint finally snaps as Yuna holds on to her. Overwhelmed, Theo blushes intensely as his body stops obeying his mind. Yuna's pink eyes begin to open as she slowly wakes up.
Rubbing her eyes, Yuna wonders aloud if she fell asleep.
Yuna is startled to find Theo sitting right beside her bed.
Yuna apologizes for dozing off and asks if he waited home. Looking completely drained, Theo insists he has not been waiting long. Theo suggests they try the sweet wine he brought for her. Mirren bursts into the room to attend to the Grand Duchess. Marin is frozen in shock to see the couple together. Red-faced, Marin screams an apology and realizes her mistake. After Marin flees, Yuna realizes it is morning and questions Theo. Theo makes a clumsy excuse about the wine cellar's massive size. Yuna smiles and asks Theo to have dinner together to eat. Yuna smiles and expresses her eagerness to taste the wine Theo chose. Theo looks at his wife in silence, appearing slightly flustered by her enthusiasm. Marin stands outside a dusty, web-covered room and apologizes to the Duchess.
Marin promises to leave quietly if the Duchess does not respond next time.
Yuna reassures Marin while the maid worries about the Duke's potential hatred. While cleaning the tower, Yuna asks Marin about the Duke's late mother. Marin describes the late Duchess Karen Rose as a highly respected and admirable leader.
Marin explains how Karen Rose vanished during a perilous mountain investigation for her people. Marin recounts how Theo nearly died searching for his mother in lethal blizzards.
Marin notes that Theo's personality changed significantly after surviving those frozen wastes.
Yuna sympathizes with Theo's past trauma and fully understands his hatred for snow. Under the moonlit sky, Yuna softly calls out her husband's name.
Yuna appears elegantly dressed in a shimmering green gown for their formal dinner.
Theo blushes intensely upon seeing his wife's radiant and beautiful evening appearance.
Theo requests to sit beside Yuna at the table, and she happily welcomes him.
During dinner, Yuna mentions she spent her day cleaning the tower's lower level. Theo insists cleaning is not her responsibility, despite the help she received. Yuna smiles brightly and explains she plans to use the cleaned rooms herself. Theo is stunned when Yuna suggestively implies the tower will be their shared room. Theo questions her proposal while Yuna highlights the windowless room's cozy atmosphere. Theo imagines an intimate scene, wondering if Yuna is being incredibly bold. Theo concludes that his wife is far more forward than he initially anticipated. Yuna declares she also hates snow now, confusing Theo with her sudden decision. Yuna suggests hiding together all winter, which Theo finds impractical but endearing.
A chibi Theo warns that the long northern winters would make her restless.
Theo laughs as Yuna suggests walking around the tower interior to stay active. Yuna gazes at Theo, noting how the snow seems to bring him deep sadness. Theo stares intensely at Yuna, his heart racing at her perceptive and kind nature. Theo expresses a sincere desire to learn more about her to avoid past misunderstandings. Theo gazes warmly at Yuna, asking for the chance to know about her. Yuna begins sharing her past, mentioning her mother's early death and her father. Yuna recalls lighting bonfires to prompt her father to talk about her late mother.
Yuna explains how the crackling fire helped her father open his heart to her.
Theo agrees to light a winter bonfire as he pours the pink wine. Theo emphasizes the importance of total honesty between a husband and a wife. Yuna hesitates, looking pensive as she considers the weight of her husband's request. Yuna watches her reflection in the wine, lost in her own private thoughts. Yuna looks back at her husband with a soft and grateful expression. Theo proposes a celebratory toast for the arrival of the coming winter season.
Euless abruptly interrupts the couple's intimate dinner with an urgent shouting announcement.
An annoyed Theo demands an explanation for the secretary's sudden, unannounced intrusion.
Euless reports that a visitor named Asarum from Luhe Island has arrived.
Yuna stands up in excitement, identifying Asarum as her very dear friend.
Yuna asks to greet her guest immediately, and Theo decides to accompany her. Yuna hums happily while Theo watches her departure with a flustered expression.
Euless stops the Duke to provide one more crucial detail about the new visitor.
Theo is taken aback when Euless clarifies that the Duchess's visitor is a man.
Yuna rushes into the reception room as a tall visitor stands waiting.
Asarum, the handsome successor of the Apan tribe, greets Yuna with a warm smile.
Yuna joyfully throws her arms around Asarum, embracing her friend with genuine delight.
Asarum asks Yuna how she traveled so far, and she explains she came simply because she wanted to see him. Theo and Ulysses watch from a distance, paralyzed with shock as the two friends hold hands. Fuming with jealousy, Theo realizes the level of intimacy between them means he must be extremely cautious.
Yuna introduces Asarum to Theo, describing him as her closest childhood friend since they were very small. Theo repeats the phrase about being a closest friend with a dark and menacing expression.
Theo and Asarium stand face to face as Asarium offers a casual greeting to the Grand Duke.
The handsome visitor from Luhe Island officially introduces himself as Asarum.
Asarum extends his hand for a greeting, while Theo stares at him with cold, judgmental eyes.
Theo's eyes glow with suspicion as he questions the tone of the visitor's previous remark.
Theo questions Asarum's words, while Yuna flusteredly explains that her friend finds formal etiquette quite awkward. A tiny chibi Yuna scolds Asarum, reminding him he must use formal speech when addressing the Grand Duke.
Asarum asks if a more formal greeting would be more appropriate for the current situation.
Theo remains silent, staring blankly at the visitor's outstretched hand with an unreadable expression. Deciding not to put Yuna in a difficult position, Theo reaches out to shake hands with Asarum.
Theo forces a smile while greeting Asarum, despite internally fuming over the man's previous embrace with Yuna.
Asarum looks down at his hand, which is red and trembling from the Duke's incredibly powerful grip. Asarum asks Yuna if this massive man is a person or a beast, causing her to panic at his rudeness.
Theo curiously asks Yuna what they were just discussing in their private language, making her look nervous.
Theo is privately convinced that the visitor was bad-mouthing him in a language he could not understand.
Yuna demands Asarum speak the common language from now on, and he playfully agrees to her request.
Asarum asks if he can join the couple's meal, leaving Yuna surprised by his bold and sudden request.
Theo decides to use this meal as a chance to demonstrate his generosity and maturity as a husband. Theo agrees to the request with a stiff and formal acceptance.
Theo invites Asarum to join them for dinner if he is feeling hungry.
Theo emphasizes that he is only being accommodating because Asarum is his wife's dear childhood friend.
The three characters sit together at the dinner table in a tense and silent atmosphere.
Asarum reassures Yuna that her village is safe and the weather is much warmer back home.
Asarum notices the food on the table and asks the Duke if he can join them.
Asarum points his finger toward Theo, prompting Yuna to scold him once more for his lack of manners.
While Yuna corrects Asarum's titles, Theo stares at him with pure hatred, internally calling him a bastard.
Asarum suggests the Duke leave since he has finished eating, but Theo firmly refuses and says he will eat more.
Theo orders Ulysses to bring him another meal to ensure he has a reason to stay at the table.
Theo places his hand firmly on the table, resolving never to leave Yuna alone with this man. Theo eats his food with aggressive speed, while Yuna happily assumes he simply has a huge appetite. Asarum asks Yuna if she missed him, and she admits she missed her family and friends back home.
Asarum gazes warmly at Yuna, confessing that he thought about her every single day while she was gone.
Asarum admits he regretted letting Yuna go, causing Theo to fume with silent rage in his seat. In a fit of jealousy, Theo bends his silverware while Yuna tries to maintain a polite conversation.
Yuna explains how well she is cared for, highlighting the support she receives from Ulysses and the staff.
Yuna glances over at her husband as she prepares to share her feelings about him.
Yuna expresses her gratitude, mentioning that Theo is a very considerate and kind man toward her. Yuna places her hand gently over Theo's, looking at him with a soft and sincere smile.
Theo tells Yuna his kindness is only natural and promises to provide anything she might ever need.
Asarum admits he is relieved to hear that the Grand Duke treats his childhood friend with such respect.
Asarum reveals his initial fear that Yuna would be mistreated or looked down upon in this unfamiliar place.
Theo stares intensely at the guest, realizing that Asarum's visit had a much more serious underlying purpose. Asarum claims that Yuna would have married him instead, using the term fiancé to describe their bond. Theo dismisses the claim with a cold smirk, calling the idea of them being engaged utter nonsense.
Theo explains the meaning of his insult, while Asarum demands to know why the idea is so ridiculous.
Theo asserts the marriage never happened and never will, while Yuna asks Asarum why he keeps bringing it up.
Yuna scolds Asarum for his behavior while he looks on sheepishly.
Yuna apologizes in her native tongue, wondering if she was too harsh in testing Asaram's character, while he questions her specific motives.
Theo remains annoyed and confused by the foreign language, while Yuna calls out to Asaram once more.
Yuna tells Asaram that she wants to support Theo and that his current behavior makes her feel incredibly uncomfortable.
Asaram looks down with a serious and contemplative expression. Asaram apologizes for his jokes going too far and thanks Theo for taking good care of Yuna. Asaram laughs while rubbing his head, attempting to lighten the heavy and tense dinner atmosphere.
Theo asserts that protecting and caring for Yuna is his natural responsibility as her husband. Asaram notes that Yuna's wish for a dependable partner came true, while Theo remains silently skeptical. Theo privately thinks that Asaram is acting pleasant on the surface, but remains a rotten person underneath.
Theo suggests retiring for the night, prompting Asaram to boldly ask for the location of Yuna's private room.
Theo explains they sleep separately, but Asaram suggests staying up all night to chat with Yuna.
Theo firmly directs Asaram to the guest room on the mansion's 3rd floor to end the conversation.
Theo clenches his fist and flatly refuses when Asaram suggests sleeping in the same room as Yuna.
Achibi Asaram explains that friends sleeping together is a common custom back on Ruhei Island. Achibi Theo coldly informs the visitor that no such custom exists in this northern land.
Theo fumes with visible rage while Yuna watches the confrontation with a startled and worried expression.
Yuna ends the evening by telling Asaram he must be tired and should rest until tomorrow.
Asaram praises Yuna's kindness while Theo stares at him with intense, silent, and murderous fury.
A frustrated Theo slams a wine bottle onto the pesk.
Theo drinks alone in his room, contemplating how to permanently get rid of the intrusive guest.
Theo worries that hurting the guest would cause Yuna to become anxious and leave the mansion forever.
A sudden knock at the door breaks Theo's dark thoughts. Yuna waves gently from the doorway with a kind smile.
Theo is surprised to see Yuna, who explains she forgot to give him a special gift.
Yuna presents a glass jar filled with tea made from special yas leaves.
Theo is deeply touched that Yuna wanted him to have the special tea before anyone else.
Yuna thanks Theo for his hospitality toward Asaram, while Theo claims he is treating him as an honored guest.
Yuna explains the tea's health benefits, and Theo warmly promises to drink it and remember her advice.
Asaram walks alone through the dark and silent mansion hallway.
Asaram stops suddenly, sensing a presence behind him in darkness.
Theo looms in the shadows, demanding to know where Asaram is going at such a late hour.
Theo looks back with a cold and judgmental stare.
Theo forbids Asaram from using his name, stating only permitted people have that specific right.
Theo demands to know Asaram's true destination while suspecting the man's intentions are far from innocent.
Asaram claims he is simply unable to sleep and intended to go see Yuna in her room.
Asaram mocks Theo's jealousy before the Duke asks when the visitor is planning to finally leave.
Asaram pauses while walking, explaining he had originally planned to depart very soon.
Asaram decides to stay much longer after witnessing Theo's possessive behavior and true nature tonight. Theo questions Asaram's responsibilities as an heir and asks why the man even holds that title. Asaram confesses his deep desire to have married Yuna himself, reaching the limit of his patience with Theo.
Asaram accuses Theo of using his power to force a marriage that the islanders only accepted out of desperation. The brown-haired man shouts that the Duke's side were the ones who used marriage as a threat.
Theo remains calm and smirked, reminding Asaram that his people were the ones who ultimately accepted the deal. Asaram grits his teeth in frustration and silent, burning rage. Asaram claims Yuna was sent only because of the magic stones, despite his own fierce opposition to the plan. Theo mocks Asaram's failure to prevent Yuna from coming to the mansion and calls his anger a tantrum.
Asaram realizes Theo sees their tribe's desperation as nothing more than a convenient excuse to keep Yuna. Asaram questions who would ever love Theo and exposes the Duke for hiding secret desires behind a mask.
Asaram declares that the only reason he allows Theo to live is for the sake of Yuna.
Theo points a finger at Asaram, scheduling a secret meeting at the training grounds tomorrow.
Asaram smirks, accepting the challenge as exactly what he was hoping for.
Marin praises Yuna's radiant beauty while Yuna politely returns the compliment.
Marin mentions hearing about a visitor, asking if the secretary had already informed Yuna.
The maid shares rumors about the visitor's handsome appearance in very polite manners.
Yuna curiously wonders if her childhood friend was actually considered handsome by others.
A flashback shows Asaram surrounded by several admiring women back in their home village.
Yuna asks if the Grand Duke's refined looks aren't significantly more beautiful.
Yuna praises her husband's physique, leaving the maid looking visibly awkward and nervous.
Sparkles surround a close-up of Theo's striking blue eyes in this idealized view.
A caption notes Yuna's biased view that every one of Theo's features is beautiful.
Marin nervously agrees while privately recalling Theo's terrifying blood-soaked appearance on the battlefield. The maid mentions that their colleague Ray will be arriving a little late today. A narrative note signals that something significant is occurring at the training grounds. The scene shifts to the empty training grounds enclosed by high wooden fences. Asaram laughs while boasting to several knights about hunting a bear with a dagger. The visitor claims to be the village's best warrior, despite the knight's skepticism. Asaram tells the blushing knights that the mansion's maids are interested in their order.
Achibi Asaram offers to arrange a meeting, much to the knight's excitement.
Theo suddenly appears, questioning why the men are neglecting their training duties.
The knights are startled while Asarum mocks Theo for being late and afraid.
The two men clash violently with wooden training swords in the center of the grounds. The watching knights are left in shock by the speed of the exchange.
Asarum warns that Yuna will be unhappy staying with someone as vicious as Theo. Gritting his teeth, Asarum insists that a dark man like Theo shouldn't be near Yuna. Theo delivers a powerful strike that forces Asarum to defend himself with difficulty. Asarum accuses Theo of being cruel for keeping Yuna in this lonely place. Theo remains entirely calm, asking if the visitor has finished his long speech. Asarum suggests getting serious just as the Duke prepares to finish the match. Theo strikes Asarum with overwhelming force, sending him reeling backward across the dirt. Theo stands over his fallen opponent, noting it only took 3 hits. The Duke prepares to end the session, satisfied with his limited demonstration of power. The knights stand in stunned silence at the sudden conclusion of the duel. Asarum crashes to the ground while his wooden training sword shatters into pieces. The visitor groans in pain on the ground while Theo looms over him.
Asarum admits that the Duke's physical strength is far more impressive than expected.
Asarum complains about Theo's harshness while the Duke begins walking away without looking.
Theo stops when Asarum announces his intention to go see Yuna immediately.
Asarum asks if Theo intends to stop him from going to her room. Theo tells Asarum to wash up first because he smells after the training. A voice frantically calls out to the Grand Duke from across the hallway.
Ulysses runs toward his master, checking to see if he is all right.
Ulysses notes the visitor took a beating while Theo wipes sweat from his chest.
The secretary panics at the sight of blood, but Theo dismisses the minor injury.
Ulysses expresses surprise that the visitor's combat skills were actually quite legitimate and strong. Theo acknowledges Asarum's agility, while Ulysses wonders why the Duke only hit him thrice.
Theo reveals that allowing the visitor to land several hits was actually intentional. Theo explains he took hits because he felt he obtained Yuna too easily.
Yuna is shown in a symbolic vision surrounded by dark thorns and blooming roses. Theo's eyes narrow as he resolves that he has no intention of letting Yuna go. Theo smirks and tells Asarum to go ahead and see Yuna.
A heavy boot steps onto the debris of the shattered staircase. Asarum stands before the broken stairs, fuming at the Duke's actions.
Back in his office, Theo calmly reviews documents at his desk.
Theo looks at the paperwork with a focused and slightly annoyed expression. Theo privately regrets showing the visitor any mercy during their previous encounter.
Asarum bursts into the office, accusing Theo of sabotaging his visit.
Theo scolds the visitor for his lack of manners and basic etiquette.
Theo mockingly asks if the visitor is unwell while walking past Ken. Theo reveals that only a bridge connects his room to Yuna's quarters. Theo informs the shocked visitor that seeing Yuna now requires his permission.
Asarum accuses Theo of keeping Yuna imprisoned within the mansion's tower.
Yuna suddenly appears in the room with Marin, looking startled by them. Yuna greets the men while Asarum tries to hide his obvious frustration. Yuna reports the emergency that the tower stairs have completely collapsed.
Theo lies about a repair accident while Asarum glares at Entity.
Yuna looks concerned while Marin stands behind her, appearing slightly suspicious.
Theo takes responsibility for the accident to gain Yuna's trust and sympathy.
Theo offers a reassuring smile and tells Yuna not to worry. Asarum stands in the background, visibly fuming at the Duke's manipulation. Yuna asks Asarum if he and Theo were having a friendly conversation.
Yuna happily assumes the two men have bonded over the past May.
Theo confirms their friendship while Asarum looks on with total disbelief.
Theo prepares to leave, prompting Yuna to ask where he is going.
Yuna announces her plan to work in the garden with Marin today. Theo warns Yuna about thorns, but she insists on gardening for exercise.
Asarum volunteers to help with the gardening as a form of exercise. Theo immediately decides to join them, refusing to leave them alone together.
Theo claims he also needs exercise while exchanging a glare with Asarum. Yuna and Marin prepare for garden work under the bright morning sun.
The two men stand in the background, ready to begin their maker.
Theo and Asarum both agree that Yuna's gardening plans will be beautiful. Behind Yuna's back, the two rivals share an intense and sparking glare.
Rei arrives and apologizes to Yuna for being late for her duties.
Yuna is impressed by Rei's elegant appearance in her formal sparring outfit.
Yuna compliments Rei's attire, making the knight blush with a shy smile. Rei begins to bring up the specific task Yuna had requested earlier.
Rei stops in shock upon seeing the high-ranking men performing menial labor. Yuna explains that Theo and Asarum have volunteered to help decorate.
Asarum looks weary and contemplative as he focuses on pulling the weeds.
Rei watches Asarum, finding him flashy and annoyed he wounded her lord. Asarum recognizes Rei and calls out to her, surprising the stoic knight. Asarum enthusiastically praises Rei's impressive skills at the training grounds earlier.
Rei is left speechless and blushing at the visitor's bold, friendly compliment.
Marin calls Rei to help with woodcutting, breaking the awkward silence.
Yuna suggests that the two strong men should handle the woodcutting instead.
Rei worries that the men might be too exhausted from their morning hike. Yuna points toward 2 large tree stumps that need to be removed. Yuna asks if the work is too difficult for her 2 volunteers. Theo grips his tool with competitive intensity, ready to prove his strength.
Theo struggles with a heavy axe while Asarum questions his immediate exhaustion.
Asarum boasts about his tree chopping experience back on Lue Island.
The brown-haired man exerts himself as he swings the heavy axe.
Asaram struggles while Rei steps forward to handle the task herself.
Rei's gaze is sharp and focused as she prepares a strike.
Rei effortlessly splits the massive wooden log in a single blow.
Yuna praises Rei's impressive strength while the former knight remains stoic.
Theo attempts to reclaim the axe, insisting the work isn't difficult.
The black-haired duke is intensely determined to outshine his rival. Theo swings the axe with all his might to split the work. Breathing heavily, Theo seeks Yuna's praise after successfully splitting the log.
Yuna notices Theo's pale complexion and expresses deep concern for him. The Duchess tells Rei and Marin to finish the gardening later. Yuna urges Theo to rest, worried about his lack of sleep.
Theo stares at his wife with a dazed and smitten expression.
Asaram invites Yuna for a walk, and she happily agrees.
Yuna reminds a protesting Theo that he was supposed to rest. Yuna promises to return quickly while Asaram smiles at her warmly. Theo grabs Yuna's hand as she begins to walk away. Theo gazes at her longingly while holding both of her hands. The black-haired man asks Yuna to brew him tea upon her cabin. Yuna agrees while Asaram watches Theo's possessive behavior with total confusion. Theo watches from behind as Yuna and Asaram depart together. The Duke turns back toward Rei to give her an order.
Theo commands Rei to have guards shadow them and report everything.
Yuna and Asaram walk through the garden together in high spirits. Asaram notes the flowers are blooming despite the harsh cold winds.
Yuna explains the local magic stones keep the garden in blue.
Asaram mentions the river freezing in winter while glancing at Yuna. Narrative text notes that multiple shadows are following them through the trees. Asaram suspects Theo sent the many spectators to watch their walk. The brown-haired man notes the beauty of the path they're walking. Looking at the scenery helps put the silver-haired Duchess at ease. Asaram recalls that Yuna has loved long walks since her childhood. Asaram reminisces about their shared happy moments before the cold arrived. Clenching his fist, Asaram decides there is only one way forward. Asaram points to a cabin and Yuna confirms it is Earth. Asaram invites Yuna inside the cabin to discuss a recent tournament.
Yuna enters the building while hidden shadows watch from the shrowery.
Once inside, Asaram suggests they speak in their native Luhaian language.
Yuna is delighted to hear about Suma winning the warrior tournament.
Asaram explains he missed the event while helping his busy father.
Asaram makes Yuna laugh by imitating his father's strict and overbearing nature.
The Duchess laughs heartily at the stories of their home island. Yuna pauses her laughter to ask how her father is doing. Asaram reveals her father has become a recluse since she left. Asaram insists that Yuna should tell her father about her happiness herself.
Yuna explains she must stay for a year for appearance's sake.
Asaram produces a scroll and tells Yuna she denigna. Standing in the light, Asaram smiles while holding the mysterious scroll.
Ulysses enters the room while Theo begins a conversation.
A shirtless Theo asks about Yuna's location, shocking the messenger. Ulysses notes Theo's incredible healing speed and asks about the Duchess. Theo is confused when told he returned much earlier than expected.
Ulysses apologizes for telling Yuna to visit later while Theo slept.
Theo demands a report on Yuna's activities from the secret guards. Theo is stunned to hear Yuna and Asaram entered a lot. Theo's anger flares as he questions their reason for entering together.
Theo berates Ulysses because the guards failed to intervene during the mock.
Ulysses reports the pair spoke a language the guards couldn't understand. Theo ponders the news that Asaram was pleading with his wife. Back in her room, Yuna lies awake, reflecting on her conversation.
Yuna recalls Asaram mentioning a possible way to help her Highland.
In a flashback, Asaram discusses a legend passed down on Luhei Island. The legend tells of a figure with snow-white hair known as Sioran. Legend says the Sorin can gain power from the River of Memories. Asaram notes that the castle residents often compared Yuna to the Saren.
Yuna remembers her father dismissing the legend as a mere story.
Asaram insists drinking from the River of Memories could save their home. Asaram claims he found a lead about holy water at the temple. Asaram urges Yuna to visit the temple and drink the water.
Asaram admits his source is untrustworthy but remains desperate for a solution.
He explains his desire to protect Yuna from being labeled a thief.
Yuna is moved and claps Asaram's hand in a show of support. Yuna promises to help the island and discuss the matter with Theo. Asaram cautions Yuna against mentioning the jade or the river to Theo. In the present, Yuna sighs in hopes Asaram's plan will work. She imagines the islanders finally being free from the eternal cold.
Yuna envisions her father regaining his lost strength and vitality.
The silver-haired Duchess blushes while thinking about her growing feelings for Theo. Yuna wonders if Theo views her positively after their recent walk together. Yuna feels a sense of joy, believing Theo is finally relying on her. A sudden realization strikes Yuna, causing her eyes to widen. Yuna panics upon remembering she promised Theo tea with yas leaves.
Yuna rushes through the halls, fearing she has kept Theo waiting.
Approaching the Duke's door, Yuna wonders if it is already too late. Yuna decides to quietly brew the tea and leave without waking him.
Yuna is startled when she accidentally bumps into someone in the dark.
Yuna is shocked to find a very awake Theo standing before her. The Duchess apologizes profusely for forgetting her promise to brew tea. Theo's intense, focused gaze makes Yuna feel extremely self-conscious. Looking at Theo, Yuna nervously wonders if he is angry with her. Yuna continues her apology, asking if he has been waiting for Law. Theo remains silent, his blue eyes fixed on his blushing wife. Theo internally worries that Yuna might be the one upset with him. The couple sits together in silence as they finally share their tea. Theo regrets missing his chance to speak because he was admiring Yuna.
Thought bubbles reveal Theo was lurking to hear about her rock.
Theo finds Yuna's flustered and cute expression absolutely irresistible.
Yuna looks up at Theo with a look of pure surprise.
Over tea, Theo mentions his habit of walking the bridge to ease stiffness, which Yuna finds reassuring.
Theo asks if she is feeling better, and Yuna enthusiastically confirms her full recovery.
The white-haired woman carefully places her porcelain teacup back onto the table.
Theo asks if she enjoyed her walk, and Yuna confirms she had a lovely time.
Yuna expresses her joy at catching up with Asarum, unaware of Theo's visible irritation.
Yuna asks Theo about visiting a northern temple, catching him off guard with the request.
Theo's mood sours when Yuna admits the trip was originally Asarum's idea. Theo explains that getting permission to enter the Temple of Phoenix is a difficult process.
Theo offers a bright, knowing smile as he considers the upcoming visit. Dressed in formal green and gold, the Duke is addressed with high respect.
The secretary provides Theo with a special item to give to Yuna during her prayers. A brief note suggests that the upcoming outfit will suit Yuna perfectly. Theo compares Yuna to a delicate bird in silk, but Asarum suddenly interrupts.
Theo is visibly annoyed as Asarum jokes about remembering to knock this time.
Asarum notices the holy garments and declares his intention to go see Yuna immediately. Theo reluctantly agrees to accompany the visitor to the Duchess's quarters.
A hand knocks firmly on the door to inquire if Yuna is present.
The blonde maid opens the door and permits the two men to enter.
Yuna is revealed in a stunning white and blue ceremonial gown surrounded by flowers.
Theo compliments her amazing appearance while Asarum watches with an impressed smile. Yuna is startled by Theo's sudden approach as he steps toward her. Intricate patterns of white lace highlight the elegance of the ceremonial attire. Theo carefully places a light blue cloak over Yuna's shoulders.
Theo explains the cloak's magic stone lining while a jealous Asarum watches their closeness.
Asarum criticizes the size of Yuna's room compared to the rest of the mansion.
Yuna defends her cozy room, but Asarum expresses dissatisfaction with her living conditions. Yuna insists she chose this life, leading Asarum to question if she fears Theo.
Asarum claims everyone in the mansion is on edge due to the Duke's presence.
Yuna scolds Asarum and reminds him that Theo facilitated their temple visit.
Asarum apologizes for upsetting her, claiming he was merely repeating common rumors.
Theo suggests they focus on the temple's beauty instead of further bickering.
Yuna apologizes to Theo while Asarum leads the way out of the road.
Theo privately resolves to endure the visitor only until his inevitable departure. Asarum looks back with a serious and contemplative expression as they walk. The Grand Temple of Phoenix stands under a bright, clear sky.
The trio enters the pristine white hallways of the holy temple grounds.
A voice frantically calls out to the Duke from across the Zal.
Lambros, the high priest of the Temple of Phoenix, appears looking quite startled.
Lambros is shocked by Theo's presence, noting the Duke usually avoids such holy places.
Theo asks if there is a problem with his arrival, prompting frantic apologies.
Theo orders the priest to guide the Grand Duchess, leaving Lambros utterly bewildered. The priest's mention of the missing wedding ceremony causes Theo's temper to flare.
Lambros bows deeply in apology for his rudeness toward the unexpected Grand Duchess.
The high priest is suddenly struck by Yuna's ethereal and radiant beauty.
An idealized golden statue of the goddess Daphne stands in resplendent light.
Lambros believes Yuna is the living incarnation of the goddess herself.
Theo glares at the priest, silently commanding him to keep his thoughts private.
Theo stops Yuna for a brief moment before she proceeds further.
Theo gently places a lace veil over Yuna's head, receiving her soft thanks.
Yuna heads off to pray while Theo promises to wait for her return.
The small maid instructs the two men to follow her inside.
Theo and Asarum stand in a grand room waiting for Yuta. Asarum suspiciously asks if Theo planned this temple visit from the beginning.
Theo reveals he investigated the details of how Asarum entered the duchy.
Theo notes that Asarum spent a significant amount of time in Pios. Asarum flinches, visibly shaken by the Duke's knowledge of his past.
Asarum questions if the Duke has been digging into his personal history.
Asarum sits and accuses Theo of spying on him like a criminal. Theo claims he only wants Yuna, but Asarum accuses him of sugarcoating.
Asarum claims he knows Yuna well enough to know she is unhappy.
Asarum boldly asserts that Yuna would have been happier married to him.
Theo tells Asarum to stop whining and calls his feelings truly disgusting.
Asarum stands up and shouts, questioning if Theo has investigated himself.
A blood-red vision depicts Theo as a demonic killer who topples nations.
Asarum brings up rumors about Theo losing his sanity after his mother.
Theo grabs Asarum's collar, ordering him to shut his mouth immediately.
Yuna opens the doors and calls out to Theo in total shock. The white-haired woman stands frozen, horrified by the violence in the room. Yuna shouts for Theo to stop his aggressive behavior toward their guest. Theo releases Asarum, who gasps as Yuna rushes to check his well-being. Asarum claims he is fine even though a mark is on him.
Theo turns his back and walks away as Yuna calls his name. Asarum asks if the Duke intends to apologize for his sudden outburst. Theo looks back coldly, stating he only asked Asarum to protect Yuna.
Asarum scoffs at the Duke's aggression while Yuna watches them both.
Asarum tries to lead Yuna away, calling Theo a dangerously violent person.
Yuna stops and asks Aserum why he lied to her earlier.
Yuna tells Aserum he no longer has the right to use her name.
Yuna looks at Aserum with a cold, distant, and deeply hurt expression.
Aserum is left stunned as Yuna turns her back on him completely.
A close-up shows Aserum sweating and trembling from Yuna's harsh rejection. Theo walks through the hallway, scaring the priests as he passes by. Theo privately regrets being provoked into showing his violent side to Yuna. Theo considers Yuna's reaction and fears he has ruined her trust. Theo punches a stone pillar in a fit of rage and frustration.
Theo leans against the cracked pillar, terrified that Yuna will leave him.
Theo realizes that Yuna will eventually discover the truth of his identity. Theo resolves to keep Yuna captive even if she hates him forever. Yuna suddenly calls out to Theo, appearing through a purple haze. Theo clenches his bloodied fist, determined to never let her run away.
Yuna runs toward her husband, her ceremonial dress trailing behind her. Yuna scolds Theo, saying he should have hit Aserum instead of Starum. Yuna expresses deep concern for Theo's bloodied and injured hand.
Yuna jokingly asks if the Grand Duke is actually afraid of doctors.
Yuna tells Theo to be brave so his wound can heal quickly.
Theo suggests seeing a shrine priest instead of a traditional physician.
Yuna offers a bright, radiant smile that catches Theo off guard.
Theo blushes and smiles softly, comforted by Yuna's unexpected kindness.
The couple enters the medical room, surprising the priest at the desk. Theo politely asks the attendant to give them a moment of privacy. Theo aggressively orders someone to move, eliciting a cry of terror. Yuna watches a priest flee and considers personally treating Theo's wound. Theo dismisses the need for a priest while Yuna asks him to rate.
Yuna instructs Theo to sit so she can clean his bloodied hand.
Holding his hand, Yuna warns Theo to endure the upcoming medical treatment. Yuna blows on the wound, causing Theo to blush and groan flusteredly.
Yuna asks if Theo was lying about the injury not causing him pain.
Theo directs Yuna to apply the medicine directly onto his injured hand.
A vibrant green healing liquid is poured carefully onto the open wound. Theo explains that the medicine's effectiveness is due to infused divine power.
Theo asks for Yuna's hand, momentarily ignoring his own healing injury.
A soft glowing light surrounds the couple as they hold hands gently. Yuna reveals she overheard their previous conversation while seeking a temple guide. Yuna apologizes for Aserum's rudeness, which Theo dismisses as being perfectly fine.
Theo characterizes the earlier conflict as a mistake and suggests moving forward. Theo tells Yuna his regret far outweighs any she might feel herself.
Yuna responds with a lighthearted laugh, puzzled by Theo's earnest, cryptic words.
Aserum suddenly bursts into the room and frantically calls out for Yuna. Aserum demands to know why they left and says he searched everywhere.
Yuna sternly halts Aserum's approach and demands he offer an immediate apology.
Aserum admits his fault and suggests they find the holy water quickly. Yuna stops Aserum's approach and clarifies the intended recipient of his apology.
Yuna gestures toward her husband, identifying him as the one Aserum wronged.
Theo reacts with intense blushing when Yuna addresses him as her husband. The Duke stands paralyzed with secret joy at Yuna's formal, affectionate acknowledgement. Aserum watches the couple's intimate interaction with a stunned and silent expression.
Yuna stands between the two men as Aserum maintains his quiet posture. Theo struggles to find his words after being called a husband by Yudat.
Aserum bows deeply and expresses his gratitude for the Duke's unexpected generosity. The group is startled by frantic shouting and a commotion outside the door. Lambros bursts into the room looking terrified and calls out for the Duke. Theo asks for an explanation as the panicked priest demands his full attention.
An urgent announcement reveals that all holy water in the temple has vanished.
A close-up confirms the temple's large stone basin has completely dried up.
Illustrated panels detail the architectural differences of the continent's 5 Daphne temples.
Narration explains the miraculous distribution of never-ending sacred water from the main temple.
Theo demands a full explanation from the kneeling, green-haired priest regarding the miracle.
The priest admits the sacred water began decreasing 3 months ago before vanishing. The priest explains their use of fake water to keep temple outsiders away. Theo notes the timing of the drought matches Yuna's arrival in the principality. Theo inquires if the other temples are experiencing the same water supply issues. The priest explains their independence and lack of communication with the Bios Empire.
Theo resolves to protect Yuna and asks the priest about a forbidden book.
Theo's inquiry regarding Yuna's identity as a saint shocks the green-haired priest. The priest admits Yuna matches the saint's description as Theo watches her.
A text bubble defines the saint as a messenger sent by goddess Daphne.
An illustration depicts the goddess Daphne in a radiant and golden celestial form. Theo concludes that the existence of a saint currently makes no logical sense.
Theo demands immediate updates on Bios while the temple stands in the twilight.
The Duke, Duchess, and Aserum share a silent, intense candlelit dinner. Aserum sits at the dinner table, thinking they gained nothing from the trip since there is no sacred water.
Aserum watches the Duke, lamenting that he didn't hear the conversation with the priest.
Yuna smiles radiantly at the table as the Duke watches her with a soft expression. The Duke's hand is shown holding a glass filled with a pink beverage.
Theo mentions the temple's special medicines while Yuna inquires about the disappearance of the sacred water.
A small icon of Theo notes that Yuna is finally starting to show some respect.
Theo wipes his mouth, explaining that storage issues caused the drought and the spring will refill in 3 months.
Asarum looks down at his glass, thinking the situation with the temple water is incredibly strange.
Theo gazes at his wife, reminding her that she was the one who wanted to visit the temple. Theo notes that Asarum's behavior suggests he only came to the temple to obtain the sacred water.
Asarum claims he only became curious about the water after hearing it was good for one's health.
Looking down at the large table, Theo asks the brown-haired man if he is truly leaving so soon.
Theo mockingly regrets not being nicer to his wife's friend, while Asarum tells himself to remain calm.
Asarum turns to Yuna and offers a sincere apology for causing her so much worry.
Asarum expresses his regret, telling Yuna he was unable to help her with anything during his stay. Yuna looks toward her husband while they continue their dinner in the grand candlelit hall.
A man pours a clear yellow liquid from a green bottle into a glass. Theo holds up his glass and offers a faint, confident smile.
A close-up of the glass shows Yuna's reflection as Theo thinks that he will be her only helper.
A man with glasses and brown hair enters the office holding a white folder.
The aide asks why Theo is drinking champagne, and the Duke explains it is to lift his spirits.
The aide realizes why the Duke is in such a good mood as he thinks of the couple.
The aide interrupts the Duke's mood, stating that an urgent matter has arisen for him to see.
A gloved hand places a white envelope with a red wax seal onto the desk.
Theo reads the letter, which mentions a festival for magic stones being held in the south.
The aide explains the discovery of a magic stone, and Theo asks if he is expected to attend.
The aide insists that the Duke must travel to Sabran in the south, regardless of his wishes.
Narrated bubbles explain that an old priest has been located and insists on meeting in Sabran.
Theo looks surprised by the news as he continues to hold his glass of champagne.
The aide explains that the situation at the Sabran temple is related to the missing sacred water.
Theo reviews the documents, noting that they needed an excuse to hide the true reason for the trip.
Theo asks if a woman named Camila lives in Sabran, causing the aide to flinch in surprise.
Theo mockingly asks the aide about his last encounter with Camila, causing the man to sweat nervously. Looking out the window, Theo orders his aide to begin preparations for their journey to the south. The following day, a horse-drawn carriage waits as Theo and Yuna prepare for a departure.
Yuna expresses regret over the short visit, while Asarum notes he must return to his tribe.
Asarum looks at the carriage, thinking about how much effort went into developing the northern lands.
Asarum says goodbye to Yuna, calling her by her full name as she brings up their previous argument.
Yuna acknowledges he spoke out of anger and asks what he is holding in his hand.
Yuna holds out a stack of letters and asks Asarum to deliver them to her father.
A vision shows Yuna writing letters at a desk, noting she has written to her father daily.
Asarum looks at the letters, realizing that Yuna still deeply misses her home on Luhe Island.
Theo approaches the pair and asks if Yuna's friend is already prepared to leave the Dokji. Theo explains he prepared a gift of magic stones for the trip as servants move large crates. Asarum thanks the Duke, noting he is concerned because the destination is where Yuna's father lives.
Asarum calls out Yuna's name one last time before his departure from the estate.
Asarum pulls Yuna into a sudden hug, thanking her for the welcome while Theo watches with irritation.
Asarum smiles warmly and suggests that they meet again on a much brighter, sunny day.
Yuna smiles happily and agrees to the brown-haired man's request as they embrace.
Yuna waves goodbye to the departing carriage while Theo stands beside her with his hand on his hip.
Asarum sits inside the moving carriage, resolving to head toward the Bios Empire.
Looking out the window, Asarum thinks about finding the source of the sacred water.
Asarum holds the stack of letters from Yuna with a grim expression.
Resting his hand on the envelopes, Asarum silently apologizes to his friend. The carriage departs through the gates as Asarum vows to deliver the letters.
Back at the estate, Yuna sighs while sitting alone at the Babel. Theo asks Yuna if something is bothering her while they share tea.
Yuna admits she feels regret for being too cold toward Asarum earlier. Irritated, Theo privately considers that he should have simply removed the man.
Theo turns his attention to a mustachioed chef standing near the doorway. The chef bows respectfully and confirms he will follow the Duke's orders.
Yuna looks up in surprise as a new dish is brought to her. 2 golden chestnut-topped desserts are served on a decorative white plate. Theo invites Yuna to try a piece of the seasonal chestnut treat. A close-up shows Yuna taking a bite of the sweet dessert. Radiant with joy, Yuna expresses her delight at the delicious flavor.
Yuna enjoys the soft texture while Theo thinks her reaction is adorable.
Theo smiles warmly at his wife, pleased by her happy reaction. The couple enjoys a peaceful and scenic tea time surrounded by flowers. Setting down his tea, Theo mentions his upcoming journey to the south. Theo explains he must attend an event and will be away for weeks. Looking intently at her, Theo silently hopes Yuna asks to accompany him. Yuna acknowledges how busy Theo is while he watches her expectantly.
Yuna cheerily reassures Theo that she will be fine with her attendance.
With a bright smile, Yuna encourages her husband to go without worry. Theo stares back silently, looking visibly disappointed by her independent response. A brown-haired physician examines Theo's hand while the Duke looks away. The doctor notes that the wound healed perfectly thanks to immediate care. Theo remains pensive as the physician asks if he feels any other discomfort. Theo mentions he has a squirrel, shocking both the doctor and the aide. The doctor notes the change in metaphor while Theo describes a cute squall. Theo expresses a sudden, deep-seated fear that the squirrel might run away. Theo's possessive thoughts manifest as an image of a birdcage bound by chains. Theo asks for advice on protecting the creature and keeping it by him. Theo confirms the squirrel hasn't shown any signs of wanting to leave yet. The doctor points out that there is no reason to assume it wants flight.
Narration describes the precious nature of the sudden happiness the Duke has found. Concerned about losing this joy, Theo asks the physician for a solution. The doctor suggests that Theo must make the squirrel acknowledge its master.
The doctor explains that animals must be treated differently than humans.
Building a bond through gentle feeding and petting is the doctor's primary advice.
An illustration depicts a miniaturized Theo gently petting a small pink-eyed squirrel. Theo takes diligent notes, agreeing that following this advice will reduce his anxiety.
Concentrating on his notepad, Theo commits to the petting and feeding strategy.
The physician watches, thinking the Duke simply needs to learn self-control. Theo's expression becomes dark and intense as he vows to regain his humanity.
Yuna hums a happy tune while brushing her long silver hair.
An attendant notices Yuna's cheerful mood and asks if something good happened.
Yuna glows with delight, thinking about the many praises Theo gave her.
A flashback shows Theo offering bread and complimenting Yuna during their meal together.
Theo gently pets Yuna's silver hair, noting he enjoys watching her eat.
Complimenting Yuna's beautiful round eyes, Theo leaves the silver-haired woman flustered. Walking through the lush estate garden, Yuna marvels at the fresh hydrangeas.
Yuna expresses surprise that the flowers have lasted this long without wilting.
Theo praises Yuna's intelligence, causing her to blush and question his sincerity.
Suggesting they walk deeper into the path, Theo receives Yuna's happy agreement. The couple continues their stroll together through the sparkling, flower-lined garden path. Malin brushes Yuna's hair as Yuna gushes about Theo's recent sweet praises. Malin struggles to imagine the formidable Grand Duke offering such gentle compliments. Malin suggests the Duke adores Yuna, catching the silver-haired woman by surprise. Malin credits Yuna for Theo's shift away from his reclusive drinking habits.
Attributing Theo's new responsibility to marriage, Malin leaves Yuna deep in thought.
A vision of Theo appears as Yuna reflects on being his wife.
Yuna calls out to Malin, shifting her focus back to their conversation.
Dressed in gardening attire, Yuna and Malin prepare to pull garden weeds.
Yuna reacts with pure delight after spotting something adorable in the grass.
Two maids crouch on the lawn, admiring a small and fluffy creature.
Startled by Yuna's sudden presence, the two maids jump in surprise. Yuna looks down at the grass, discovering a small animal between them.
A maid holds up an orphan tuxedo kitten she has been secretly nursing.
Flushed with embarrassment, Yuna mentally insists she has no secrets to hide. Yuna points at the tiny kitten, startling the nervous maids once more. Radiant with excitement, Yuna is clearly captivated by the kitten's cute appearance.
The two maids share a sigh of relief at Yuna's joyful reaction.
Sitting on the grass, Yuna and the maids play with the kitten. Yuna laughs as the agile kitten pounces on a stalk of grass. A maid brings a bowl of food, announcing it is time to eat. The tuxedo kitten hunches over its bowl, eating its meal with gusto.
Yuna and the maids watch the kitten eat, delighting in its cuteness.
Yuna notes that the maid's way of speaking feels strangely familiar.
Deep in thought, Yuna tries to recall where she heard that tone. Yuna continues to dwell on the familiar manner in which they spoke. The silver-haired woman remains pensive, searching her memory for the voice's source.
Breaking her concentration, a maid addresses Yuna during their time in the garden. The maids ask if it is possible to raise the kitten nearby. Worried about leaving the kitten outside, the maid hopes for Yuna's help. Yuna suggests raising it behind the garden and promises to ask Theo. The scene transitions to the grand exterior of the stone estate building. Theo stands in the hallway, glancing back toward the door with curiosity.
Yuna approaches her husband, telling him she was lucky to find him.
Theo looks surprised when Yuna asks if they can raise a cat.
Theo gives his permission, and Yuna thanks him enthusiastically amidst blooming flowers.
Petting her head, Theo calls Yuna considerate for thinking of the cat. Theo searches his pockets, mentioning he happens to have some candy. Offering the candy, Theo realizes he is treating Yuna exactly like a cat. Yuna looks shocked and demands to know what Theo is doing.
Yuna shouts that she is not a pet or a cat in anger.
Declaring she doesn't want to hear it, Yuna runs away from Theo. Theo stands frozen and bewildered by Yuna's sudden and furious outburst. The Duke looks frustrated while his aide asks what to do next. Theo complains to his aide that Yuna refuses to see him after his candy offer.
Dejected, Theo realizes that Yuna will not even listen to his voice anymore.
Theo corners the brown-haired aide, clarifying that his concerns involve the Grand Duchess.
Walking away, Theo insists that the woman he spoke of is not a squirrel. The Duke slumps into a chair looking utterly defeated and miserable.
Theo asks for advice on what to do next while his aide looks on, bewildered.
The stressed aide questions why Theo wanted to lock her away or use animal metaphors.
Standing over the Duke, the aide insists that he must apologize to the Grand Duchess immediately. Theo notes her refusal to see him, but the aide argues marriage requires mutual care. Theo asks if he is entitled to affection, and the aide confirms that is marriage. The aide tells Theo to rebuild their relationship, leaving the Duke deep in pot. Theo decides to create a new plan to lock Yuna away like he did before.
The sun sets over the grand estate, signaling a shift in the day.
Crying in bed, Yuna calls Theo evil while reflecting on his recent hollow compliments. The silver-haired woman weeps, realizing she mistakenly thought Theo finally recognized her as his wife. Furious, Yuna punches her pillow and questions why she ever saw Theo as a husband. Yuna daydreams about Theo's attractive and reliable appearance before blushing into her pillow.
Snapping out of her thoughts, Yuna is startled by a sudden knock at her door.
Theo stands outside the room and asks Yuna if he may enter.
Standing in the hallway with a red pouch, Theo pleads for Yuna to open the door.
Yuna opens the door a crack, coldly asking her husband what he wants.
Theo explains he has a gift for her as he holds up the red bag.
The Duke offers a small red pouch filled with glowing green magic stones.
Yuna asks if he wants her to play with the stones, but Theo quickly denies it.
Theo looks dejected when Yuna rejects the gift, simply accepting her refusal.
Theo mentions his departure tomorrow, noting he will leave the gift with an attendant named Ray.
Yuna is taken aback, realizing that her husband is leaving for the south tomorrow.
Yuna asks when he started seeing her as a cat, and Theo struggles to explain.
Yuna calls Theo a bear and tells him to forget about their previous conversation.
Theo admits he is clumsy like a bear, while Yuna notes his large stature.
Theo is impressed she noticed his suppressed instincts, while Yuna worries she insulted him.
Theo places his hand on the door, swearing he has never viewed her as a pet. Yuna demands to know why he acted that way if he didn't view her as one.
The silver-haired woman waits expectantly for an explanation, her face flushed with emotion.
Theo admits he was clumsy, explaining that he simply finds her habits and presence very cute.
Yuna asks if he would enjoy being petted like an animal, and Theo surprisingly agrees.
The Duke offers a warm, sincere smile that radiates a gentle and affectionate energy. Overwhelmed by his reaction, Yuna reacts with a mix of shock and extreme embarrassment.
Flustered, Yuna announces she wants to rest and begins to shut the door. Yuna tells Theo to go away as she firmly closes the door in his face.
Theo stands alone in the dark hallway, looking stunned by the sudden rejection.
Euless, the Duke's aide, watches with a surprised expression from a short distance away. Euless notes the Duke's early return while Theo calls out to the aide.
Theo abruptly orders Euless to go find a man named Khan immediately.
Theo sits at his desk while Euless considers the skill of the Duke's shadow guards.
Theo mumbles to himself that he no longer has a wife who loves him. Theo resolves to assign a shadow to watch Yuna constantly to prevent her escape. Leaning his head on his hand, Theo looks frustrated while Euless addresses him.
The scene shifts to the estate courtyard where a grand carriage awaits departure.
Euless informs the Duke that it is time to leave, and Theo quietly acknowledges him.
Theo is startled as Yuna suddenly calls Orzame.
The silver-haired woman rushes toward her husband with wide eyes.
Yuna questions his silent departure while Theo admits he felt unwanted.
Theo declares that he has resolved to stop calling Yuna cute.
Yuna insists Theo's height makes him more handsome than cute.
Wrapping her arms around him, Yuna confidently claims she can do it.
Theo reacts with shock as his wife suddenly pulls him into a hug.
Wishing him safety, Yuna promises to wait for her husband's return.
Theo offers to bring her a souvenir, surprising the silver-haired woman.
Yuna blushes as she mentions the warm climate of the south.
Yuna requests flowers for the garden, and Theo promises to deliver.
The Duke encourages his wife to spend freely during his absence.
Looking intense, Theo commands Yuna to stay safely at the estate.
Yuna giggles, assuring him she had no plans to leave anyway.
Theo mentions a shadow night while his aide frets over classified information.
Noticing the time, Yuna gently urges Theo to begin his journey. Theo reaches out, asking for just a moment longer with her.
Surrounded by blossoms, the Duke pulls Yuna into a final embrace. Resting against him, Yuna remains silent as they share a quiet moment.
The silver-haired woman holds Theo tight as he prepares to leave. A carriage and mounted knights travel down a long, dusty road.
Theo gazes out the carriage window with a somber, brooding expression.
Sighing deeply, the Duke admits he already wishes to go home. 3 days pass as the estate garden begins to flourish beautifully.
Yuna asks Ray for feedback while the attendant praises her efforts.
Ray notes how Yuna transformed the garden specifically for the Duke.
Malin rushes toward the garden, shouting for the Grand Duchess's attention.
Breathless, Malin approaches Yuna as the silver-haired woman asked what happened.
Malin announces an invitation to tea with the influential Brown family.
The maid cheers for Yuna's social debut while Yuna looks up at it. The attendants discuss the lateness of the invitation's arrival at the estate.
Malin insists that social circles will provide information to help Theo.
Yuna agrees to attend, her expression full of newfound resolve.
The maids celebrate joyfully after Yuna confirms she will attend.
Bright sunlight filters through the trees as the women plan for gifts.
At an inn, a tired innkeeper rests while a boy sweeps.
The bald man is startled by a sudden loud noise outside.
Knights burst through the door, demanding all the available food.
The innkeeper panics as the soldiers order their food to go.
Theo finds their behavior excessive while his aide explains their exhaustion.
Theo orders a dawn departure despite the aide mentioning the knight's fatigue. Turning away, Theo rejects the offer of dinner and heads upstairs.
The brown-haired aide watches the Duke with a deeply perplexed look. Theo tosses his heavy uniform coat onto a nearby chair.
The Duke begins to undress after a long cane travel. Walking across the room, Theo looks toward the bed and bot.
Theo wonders if Yuna has found the message he left to her.
Sitting on the bed, Theo clears his throat while holding a stone.
Theo speaks into the green magic stone, calling out Yuna's name.
Back at the estate, Yuna stares at the glowing stone in confusion.
Theo tests the new communication stone by calling out for Yuna. Sitting on her bed, Yuna marvels at how clear Theo's voice sounds.
Theo explains that the magical stone allows for instantaneous communication between them.
The Duke downplays the rarity of the device after Yuna asks about it.
Yuna informs her husband about the tea invitation from the Brown family.
Theo reflects on the Brown family's business history while Yuna shares her plans.
Yuna mentions her plan to bake chestnut pies, which Theo finds very appealing.
Theo laments missing the tasting, and Yuna promises a future batchgram.
Relaxing on the bed, Theo listens as Yuna asks about his travel progress.
Theo describes his arrival at the inn as Yuna asks about his famine.
Yuna suspects the Duke is exhausted after he admits the trip was difficult.
When Yuna suggests ending the call for rest, Theo reacts with visible surprise.
Theo pleads for a longer conversation, claiming he has more things to ask.
Heavy footsteps echo in the hallway as someone approaches the Duke's private room.
The brown-haired aide carries a dinner tray, insisting the Duke must eat.
Standing outside the door, the aide is startled to hear a conversation inside.
Confused, the aide wonders why his master isn't alone in the room. The aide reacts with utter disbelief to a scandalous question overheard through the core.
Panicking in the hallway, the aide questions if he actually heard Theo correctly.
The brown-haired man is paralyzed with shock by the blunt admission from inside.
Theo reveals he is currently undressed while framed by a romantic rose backdrop.
Yuna is completely speechless and flushed after hearing Theo's unexpected and bold claim.
Theo flusteredly explains that he only undressed because of the intense southern heat.
Yuna notes that Theo usually wears very little, even in the colder north.
The silver-haired woman blushes while complimenting the definition of Theo's physique under moonlight. Yuna frantically denies any intentional peeking at his body, leaving Theo looking confused.
Yuna tries to change the subject by mentioning that she is wearing pajamas.
The black-haired Duke turns a deep shade of red as he processes her words. Theo is overwhelmed by the realization of her sleeping habits, looking completely flustered. A sudden loud noise echoes from the room as feathers burst into the air.
Theo destroys a pillow in his flustered state while lying about the sound.
The aide finally bursts into the room, demanding to know what is going on.
Yuna recognizes Julius's voice through the stone and asks what the commotion is.
Theo abruptly ends the communication, telling Yuna he will contact her again later.
The Duke admits the aide has arrived, while Julius looks on with disapproval. Julius berates Theo for using a rare artifact for such trivial and flirtatious talk.
Theo dismisses concerns about potential war while the aide shakes with absolute rage.
The aide continues his lecture on the stone's astronomical cost and royal exclusivity. Theo ignores the scolding and orders 3 more stones, further infuriating his aide. Back at the estate kitchen, the staff prepares to inspect the freshly baked goods. Chef Hans cautions Yuna about the heat while offering to handle the tray. Using protective mitts, the attendant Ray carefully removes the pies from the other. Everyone admires the golden color of the pies as they are set down.
Ray and Malin discuss the quality of the pastry while Yuna looks on happily.
Yuna suggests gathering the other servants to get an honest and objective evaluation. The attendants agree that an objective evaluation from the staff is an excellent plan. A little later, Yuna addresses the assembled servants and thanks them for their time. The silver-haired Duchess presents the chestnut pies and asks for the staff's feedback. A close-up shows a maid taking a bite of the freshly prepared pie. The servants bluntly inform a shocked Yuna that she used far too much salt. Servants enjoy the pies as Yuna listens to their praise. Malin leans to whisper a secret to the surprised Duchess. The maid explains that commoners rarely taste expensive desserts like chestnuts. Yuna realizes the staff enjoyed her snack more than she expected.
Yuna requests that Chef Hans prepare chestnut pies for the staff.
Despite the chef's hesitation, Yuna insists the baking must proceed immediately.
The silver-haired woman authorizes unlimited dessert production regardless of the expense. Citing Theo's permission to spend freely, Yuna shocks the worried maids. The silver-haired woman glows with joy at her generous plan.
Yuna encourages the staff to work together and eat well.
Eager to help, the maids offer their skills to the Duchess. The scene shifts to the grand gardens of the Brown estate. A woman in green declares the table settings to be perfect. Emily Brown plans to humiliate the Grand Duchess during the party.
The brown-haired woman anticipates meeting her rival for the first time.
Mocking Yuna's appearance, Emily prepares to show the Duchess her place.
Revenge for Gazelle is declared amidst a dark, swirling energy.
Gazelle sobs to Emily about her family's sudden and tragic ruin.
The purple-haired woman blames the Grand Duchess for her husband's misery.
Gazelle details how Duke Theo violently attacked her husband over Yuna.
Recounting the loss of her family's magic stone, Gizel continues crying.
Emily looks on with concern as Gazelle blames Yuna for everything.
Resolving to act, Emily promises the sobbing Gazelle she will seek revenge. Guests suggest the garden will intimidate the arriving Grand Duchess. The noblewomen mock Yuna's upbringing while sitting at the dessert-laden table. A servant announces Yuna's arrival, prompting Emily to command her entrance. Long silver locks flow as the Grand Duchess enters the party. Yuna appears looking stunningly beautiful in her elegant yellow gown.
The seated noblewomen stare at the Duchess with expressions of shock.
Utter silence falls as the guests process Yuna's unexpected beauty.
Emily panics, ordering her friends to remain seated and ignore Yuna. Emily hopes that ignoring the greeting will humiliate the Grand Duchess.
The brown-haired woman is startled as Yuna reaches out toward her. The silver-haired woman beams with a radiant and friendly smile. Flustered by Yuna's charm, Emily struggles to maintain her composure. Yuna offers her thanks while Emily awkwardly directs her to sit. A hand gestures toward the table as the party finally begins.
The noblewomen snicker as Yuna is seated at the very end.
The host believes the lowly seat will wound the Duchess's pride.
Emily looks suspicious as Yuna suddenly announces she has a request.
The Duchess requests additional chairs for the other members of her party.
Emily is horrified as Yuna suggests seating her maids at the table. Emily recognizes Malin as the high-ranking aide Eulis's younger sister.
Yuna introduces Rei while Emily trembles with visible frustration and rage.
Rei declines the seat, but Yuna insists on prioritizing her comfort. Yuna offers to trade places with Rei, leaving Emily completely appalled.
Emily fumes, feeling insulted by Yuna's casual disregard for noble etiquette.
The women sit as Emily resolves to stay on her god. With a forced smile, Emily welcomes the women to her party.
Emily asks if this is Yuna's first social outing while Yuna nods.
Mary finds it strange that the Grand Duchess hasn't received many invitations previously.
Emily worries that rumors might spread about the Duchess not fitting in with nobility.
Marin fumes, thinking it is their fault for never sending an invitation to Yuna.
Yuna happily expresses her excitement, noting this is her first invitation from Madame Emily.
The silver-haired woman feels as though she is visiting a friend's home for tea.
The host looks taken aback by Yuna's casual use of the word friend.
Emily suggests they call the Duchess by her first name, Eulina, to be more friendly. Mayrin realizes they are trying to embarrass her mistress, while Yuna innocently agrees. Beaming with joy, Yuna asks the other noblewomen for the names.
The blue-haired woman introduces herself with a nervous expression as Teresa Smith.
Looking quite flustered, the green-haired noblewoman asks to be called Chloe. The orange-haired woman hesitantly introduces herself as Mary to the Duchess. Elegant portraits display the names of the guests: Emily, Teresa, Mary, and Chloe. With a radiant and genuine smile, the silver-haired woman introduces herself as Yuna. Emily panics internally, fearing she is losing control of the social situation. Attempting to reset the mood, Emily suggests they enjoy their tea before it cools. The women settle into their seats as the garden party officially begins. A cup of tea tilts precariously as Yuna gasps in sudden alarm. Moving with incredible speed, the red-haired attendant catches the falling cup behind Teresa.
Rei calmly advises the startled noblewoman to be more careful with her drink.
Teresa blushes deeply while thanking the attendant for her swift intervention.
Rei informs her mistress that she will fetch the gifts as Yuna thanks her.
Mary questions Rei's lack of a family name, but Emily dismisses her as just a maid.
Yuna proudly clarifies that Rei is not just a maid, but also a knight.
Yuna explains that Rei was knighted for her talent during the war alongside the Duke. When Chloe asks why a knight works as a maid, Marin explains it is by choice.
Emily regrets not offering a seat to Rei now that she knows her true stars.
The brown-haired host takes a bite of the chestnut pie uniger. Emily finds the pie decent, despite thinking it is a bit dry and overly seasoned.
Emily resolves to find a fault with the food as Yuna asks for her opinion.
Following Emily's lead, Teresa and Mary claim the pie is very difficult to swallow. Emily bluntly informs the Duchess that the seasoning is too strong and the pastry dry. Mary is confused, recalling that the pie tasted perfectly fine when she tried it earlier.
After another bite, Mary realizes the dessert is actually delicious and looks completely bewildered.
Emily reminisces about the superior cake served at her own grand wedding.
Mary and Teresa recall the unique cream used by a famous imperial pâtissier for the event. Emily turns to Yuna and asks what kind of cake was served at her wedding.
The noblewomen mock Yuna after realizing she never had a formal wedding ceremony.
Emily leans in with a cruel smile, asking if there was a reason for no ceremony. The silver-haired Duchess looks deeply hurt and flinches as the interrogation continues. Marin stands up to defend Yuna, but Emily claims she is just being curious.
Emily continues to pressure Yuna about the lack of a proper wedding celebration.
The host watches with a predatory gaze, enjoying the Duchess's visible discomfort.
Emily asks if it was the Duke who decided against having a wedding ceremony.
The brown-haired woman repeats the stinging question, highlighting the Duke's supposed lack of interest.
Emily pities the Duchess for being stuck in what she calls a loveless marriage. Emily boasts about the grand weddings and expensive rings she and her friends received.
Looking down on Yuna, Emily remarks how sad it is to not be loved by a husband.
Marin slams her hands on the table, asking if the women aren't being too harsh. As Marin prepares to shout, Yuna gently stops her and insists she is fine.
At the garden party, Yuna explains that she and the Grand Duke married without knowing each other's faces or holding a ceremony.
Blushing softly, the silver-haired Duchess admits she wants to learn love because they married without it. Yuna tells the stunned noblewoman that even holding hands has been a difficult milestone for the couple. The scene shifts to a memory of a bright day at the market. With an excited expression, Yuna reveals that she finally worked up the courage to hold his hand. The noblewomen react with utter shock to the Duchess's bold admission of romantic progress.
Yuna explains that since the Duke agreed to go out again, she doesn't think he disliked the gesture.
The brown-haired host, Emily, is visibly shaken by the revelation of the Duke's gentle side. Narrative text highlights that the cold and blunt Grand Duke's acceptance signals his deep happiness. Emily declares the Duke must have been thrilled, prompting Yuna to mention they even hugged recently. The guests are floored by the news, noting the relationship is progressing much faster than expected. The silver-haired woman admits to a curious Teresa that she was the one who initiated the hug.
Yuna explains she hugged him to see him off, and the noblewoman eagerly offered to judge the romantic intent.
The ladies envision the handsome Duke embracing Yuna amidst a flurry of romantic flower petals.
Emily panics, realizing she got so caught up in the story that she forgot her plan for revenge. Looking at the beaming Duchess, Emily begins to wonder if Yulina ever had ill intentions at all. Emily concludes that someone as sincere and literal as Yuna couldn't possibly be malicious. The host realizes Gazelle's husband was the likely culprit, enjoying a truly relaxed conversation for the first time.
Emily reflects on how refreshing it is to have an honest talk instead of the usual social posturing.
Ray arrives carrying a tall stack of wooden boxes, catching the attention of the surprised Duchess. The red-haired attendant presents the boxes as special gifts from the Grand Duke to the assembled ladies. The noblewomen are breathless to find limited edition Armand plates, of which fewer than 50 are made annually.
Ray nonchalantly claims she forgot the Duke's order to bring the gifts earlier that morning.
Mary realizes the forgetfulness was a calculated move to ensure the gifts made a grand impact. If presented with the pie, the plates would have been ignored. The late arrival was a masterful social play.
Yuna is deeply moved that Theo prepared gifts for her friends despite his busy travel schedule.
Standing up with newfound humility, Emily tells the Duchess that she is the one who needs advice. The brown-haired woman sadly confesses that her own husband has never shown her such public consideration. Emily bows her head, apologizing for her previous rudeness and genuinely praising the delicious chestnut pie. Mary and the others offer their sincere apologies, but a cheerful Yuna insists she had a wonderful time. The silver-haired woman asks why they are acting as if this is their final meeting. Beaming with gratitude, Yuna thanks the women for sincerely listening to her personal stories.
Yuna takes Emily's hand, cementing their friendship and leaving the host touched by her kindness.
The Duchess suggests a future gathering at her estate, eager to learn gardening tips from Emily. Yuna asks if they will be willing to hear more stories about her husband during their next meeting. A subtle sound signals the departure of the guests as the party concludes. Riding home in her carriage, Yuna feels a sense of ease after the honest and heartfelt gathering. Mayrin praises the Duchess's charm, while Yuna modestly insists the noblewomen were simply kind to her first. The attendants argue that the women only yielded because of Yuna's gracious apology at the end. Yuna admits the wedding comments hurt, but she is happy the group eventually opened up to her. Looking ahead, Yuna asks her aides what they should prepare for their own upcoming tea party. The scene transitions to a grand building bathed in the warm light of the setting sun. Count Woodlight nervously approaches the Duke, mentioning the upcoming festival and Yuna's first visit. The black-haired Duke sits in silence, his hand resting firmly on his knee.
Duke Theo coldly interrupts the rambling noble, demanding that he get straight to the point.
When the Count asks for a business investment, the Duke stands up and refuses to hear another word. Theo commands his aide Ulysses to handle the matter and glares at the trembling Count. Citing his extreme workload, the Duke dismisses the man and leaves the room with an icy finality. A dark, satisfied smirk crosses the Duke's face as he thinks of his private plans. Gazing at a glowing green magic stone, Theo softly whispers Eulina's name with a look of pure adoration. A voice calls out to Yuna through a mysterious magical connection. Holding a glowing green orb, the black-haired Duke asks if Yuna can hear him. With a warm and gentle smile, Theo asks how the tea party went. In her room, the silver-haired Duchess reports the gathering was a sweet success.
Theo praises her kind nature, but Yuna humbly denies being a special person.
Admiring the magic stone, Yuna asks when he found time to prepare gifts. The Duke casually claims the idea simply came to him in the moment.
A narrative bubble reveals Theo sent a messenger immediately after learning of the party.
Chibi Theo gloats over the success of Ray's well-timed gift delivery mission.
Narrative text explains Theo suspected the noblewomen were plotting something malicious against Yuna. Theo relaxes, satisfied that his intervention ensured Yuna's happiness at the gathering. Yuna's voice emanates from the orb as she prepares to make a confession. The Duke asks for clarification after Yuna admits to spending a large sum.
Yuna explains the spending will be ongoing and difficult to fully calculate.
Yuna reveals she hired kitchen assistants to provide treats for the estate staff.
Theo encourages her to spend freely, though Yuna worries about using his money.
The Duchess's heart races as she is overwhelmed by Theo's generosity and support. Though miles apart, the couple shares a quiet, intimate moment over tea. Leaning close to the green stone, Yuna softly whispers Theo's name. Theo is stunned into silence as Yuna confesses that she misses him. His heart pounds as Yuna frantically tries to walk back her bold admission. Overcome with embarrassment, the blushing Duchess shakes her head in a panic. In her flustered state, the magic stone slips from Yuna's hand and cracks. Yuna despairs over the broken orb, realizing it was meant for a single use. A sudden green glow emanates from a spare stone as Theo's voice calls. Yuna quickly resumes the call, apologizing for the sudden and accidental disconnection. A tender message appears, confirming that Theo misses her just as much. The Duchess smiles brightly, her heart fluttering at his heartfelt and honest response. Both Yuna and Theo treasure the remaining moments of their magical, long-distance conversation.
The scene shifts to a grand temple perched precariously atop a jagged cliff. Theo leads Ulysses up the steep stairs, mocking his aide's poor physical condition.
Gasping for air, Ulysses questions why the Duke was training so late last night.
Theo blushes, admitting he needed to exhaust himself to avoid rushing home.
Chibi Theo quickly changes the subject as they reach the temple entrance.
They approach the building where their contact is expected to be waiting inside. A gloved hand knocks firmly while announcing their arrival to High Priest Perkos.
The door creaks open to reveal a figure dressed in ceremonial white robes.
The elderly High Priest Perkos welcomes his visitors, noting he anticipated their visit.
Inside the parlor, Ulysses notes the interior is surprisingly different from the exterior.
Perkos, the High Priest of the Eye of the Storm, prepares a pot key.
Theo asks about the tea and Perkos explains it is meant to relieve fatigue. Sipping the brew, Theo notes the taste is remarkably similar to Ya's tea. Perkos cuts to the chase, asking for the true reason for their visit.
Theo remains cautious, wondering if the man who provided the intel is trustworthy.
Theo is surprised when Perkos mentions the theft of the holy water first.
A tense silence falls as the priest sets down his cup of tea.
Narrative text suggests that the power of goddess Daphne is beginning to fade.
Perkos takes another slow, calculated sip of his tea without saying a word.
Theo observes that the elderly priest is proving difficult to read and persuade. The Duke hopes Perkos possesses forbidden knowledge that other priests do not have.
The elderly priest remarks on the irony of his popular title.
Theo and Ulysses are stunned when the priest reveals he is 25.
The white-haired man explains the temporal distortions at the temple's location.
Narrative text details the priest's departure from the Eye of the Storm.
Memories of a snowy palace are left behind as the scene shifts.
Duke Theo expresses his deep skepticism regarding the priest's mysterious claims.
The High Priest acknowledges his limited knowledge and leaves belief to Theo.
Theo inquires if Yuna's powers will simply vanish upon restoring the water.
The priest drops a bombshell, warning that Yuna herself might also disappear. Lore implies a saintess typically vanishes once her holy duty is fulfilled.
A stern silence falls as the weight of the revelation sinks in. Perkos admits that forbidden texts offer no clues about the saintess's fate.
The black-haired Duke is visibly shaken by the potential loss of Yuna.
Theo reflects on the possibility of Yuna becoming a normal human again.
He considers if this change would finally allow them to flee bias.
Theo envisions a peaceful life walking hand in hand with his beloved Duchess. Realizing Yuna might vanish entirely, Theo clenches his fist in silent agony.
High Priest Perkos signals that his assistance has reached its limit.
The priest reveals he helped Theo because of a debt to Camilla.
Theo is stunned that his grandmother is friends with the High Priest.
Perkos notes the frequent inquiries he receives regarding the saintess's origins. The priest frames his words as a threat against those seeking power.
Ulysses realizes the priest suspects Theo of coveting the saintess's divine strength.
Descending the temple stairs, Theo considers clearing up the priest's misunderstanding.
Ulysses confirms the detail regarding the high priest's favor to Lady Camilla.
Theo orders Ulysses to arrange an immediate meeting with his grandmother.
The scene shifts to the grand and sprawling estate of Lady Camilla. Estate of Lady Camilla. A blonde noblewoman asks her butler about the expected arrival of her guest.
Lady Camilla notes it has been 5 long years since their last meeting.
Looking into a mirror, Camilla scoffs at her grandson's persistent, self-willed nature.
A memory begins as Camilla bursts into a room shouting for Theo.
Camilla is horrified to find a young, bloodied Theo covered in bandages.
The doctor explains that Theo's tortured, amputated arm was only recently reattached.
Despite his critical condition, the young Duke insists on returning to war. Theo argues that he cannot leave his post while the enemy is vulnerable.
Overcome with frustration and fear, Camilla strikes her grandson across the face. The elder noblewoman glares at the boy with a mix of fury and despair.
Camilla screams, questioning the suicidal nature of the imperial bloodline's dark desires.
She accuses him of trying to die just like her son before him.
Narrative text highlights the painful truth behind Camilla's harsh and desperate words.
Snapping her fan shut, Camilla reflects on the cruelty of her own past.
Standing alone, she remembers the day she spoke just as harshly to her son.
Younger Camilla questions her son's choice to marry Grand Duchess Karen Rose.
Her son defends his choice, lamenting the suffering caused by imperial greed.
Camilla slams her hand down, terrified for his health in the harsh Larth.
The blonde man remains steadfast, declaring that Karen Rose's status is irrelevant.
He insists that his love is the only factor that truly matters.
Camilla reacts with cold finality, refusing to accept his rebellious romantic decision.
Her son urges her to leave if she cannot support his path.
Camilla walks away, vowing to live as though her son no longer exists.
The scene follows a woman in a purple gown as she walks through a grand hallway.
10 years pass as the scene shifts to a palace where a butler announces a letter from the north.
A close-up reveals a wide blue eye filled with sudden and intense shock.
Trembling with visible emotion, the noblewoman grips the newly arrived letter with shaking hands.
When the butler offers to prepare a carriage, the woman coldly dismisses the idea and tells him to forget it.
Lady Camilla reflects on her past, wondering if things would be different if she had been kinder to Karen Rose.
The butler stands silently behind the pensive blonde noblewoman as she remains lost in her thoughts.
The black-haired Duke Theo enters the room with a confident stride and a calm expression. Holding a cup of tea, Camilla asks her grandson what purpose has brought him to her estate. She remarks that it is quite strange for him to visit her first after so much time. Theo and Camilla sit across from each other at a small table to share a formal tea service.
The Duke gets straight to the point, announcing that he is here to propose a deal.
Theo looks at his grandmother as he mentions his interest in magic stones or other resources. He explains that he heard High Priest Perkos owes her a favor and asks what she wants in exchange.
A portrait of the elderly High Priest Perkos appears as Theo asks her to command the man to help him.
Camilla questions if Theo has heard of the Saintess and if he is targeting the imperial throne.
The blonde noblewoman looks at her grandson with a surprised and questioning, "Huh?"
Narrative text explains the Emperor of Bios has a bedridden son and a young princess as heirs.
A thought bubble reveals Camilla's suspicion that Theo plans to seize the throne using the Saintess's power. Camilla gazes at Theo with a stern and analytical look, trying to uncover his true motive.
Setting down his teacup with a sharp click, Theo flatly declares he has no interest in the throne. The Duke clarifies that he doesn't want her power. He wants to ensure nobody else can exploit it. Lady Camilla is stunned into silence by Theo's unexpected and selfless declaration. She peers at him, wondering what his true nature is if he wishes to make the Saintess's power unusable. Camilla warns him that Perkos will never trust a member of the royal bloodline. Theo looks at her firmly, asking for a promise that she will secure the High Priest's assistance. Camilla agrees to the request, noting that stopping the royals from stealing divine power is easy.
Clasping her hands, Camilla promises to arrange a meeting tonight, noting Theo's obvious desperation. Theo leans forward, asking what she wants from him as her part of the deal.
Camilla mentions the rumors of his marriage to a woman from a remote island village. She suggests he should meet Princess Echelon during the festival instead of staying with his wife.
Narrative text reveals the Echelon Kingdom became wealthy through successful investments in magic stone technology. Theo looks annoyed and immediately rejects the suggestion of meeting another princess.
A chibi flashback shows King Eshkelon collapsing in a rage after refusing to let Theo marry his daughter.
Camilla ignores his refusal and asks how his life with the current Duchess is going.
She mocks him, claiming he doesn't love her and noting they never even had a proper wedding ceremony. A soft image of the silver-haired Yuna appears, looking confused and innocent. Theo is struck with a wave of guilt, realizing he was thoughtless regarding Yuna's first marriage. When the Duke suddenly declares they will have a wedding, Camilla looks at him in complete shock.
Blushing slightly, Theo clarifies that they will hold the wedding ceremony as soon as they return home.
Chibi versions of the two characters stare at each other with looks of mutual confusion.
Camilla tells him she'd rather have magic stones, as she already has plenty of money.
A chibi Theo tries to pivot the conversation toward the idea of a business investment.
The chibi noblewoman laughs and repeats that she has more than enough wealth.
Crossing her arms, Camilla notes that their deal won't be valid unless he offers something better. Grumbling that she is a sly old hag, Theo reluctantly agrees to send her a wedding invitation.
The Duke ends the conversation with a look of finality, satisfied that the deal is struck.
Before leaving, Theo asks if the lilies in the garden were grown using magic stones.
Camilla explains she grows them naturally because magic-assisted flowers lose their scent.
Theo stands up and decides to take some flowers with him, leaving Camilla wondering why he wants them. The black-haired man smiles warmly while thinking about a promise he made. A blonde woman is shocked to hear he is giving his wife flowers. Several noblewomen are gathered for a tea party at a round garden table. The silver-haired Duchess welcomes her guests and asks for feedback on her decorations. The brown-haired woman, Emily, thoughtfully considers the Duchess's decor choices.
Emily notes the round table is excellent because it lacks a head seat.
Emily suggests that the wood choice for the table still needs some improvement.
Emily tells Yulina that the current garden setup suits her personality perfectly.
The group agrees that the round table fosters a sense of close conversation.
The blue-haired lady brushes back her hair and asks Yulina about Tamarin.
The women share a lighthearted and cheerful moment together over their tea. Emily suggests that since they meet often, they should name their social group. Yulina is absolutely delighted by the idea of giving their group a name. The orange-haired lady, Mary, proposes the simple and cute name, Teepee.
The group likes the name because they always share tea and kai.
The ladies express their unanimous approval of the lovely new name for their gathering. A red-haired knight arrives to inform Yelena that Marquise Giselle has come.
Both Yelena and Emily are visibly surprised by Giselle's unexpected and sudden visit.
A flashback shows Emily defending Yelena, insisting she is not a bad person.
Emily explains she had mentioned her visit to Yelena to her friend Giselle.
Yelena assumes Giselle was curious and welcomes the news with a bright smile.
Marquise Giselle, a woman with curly red hair, stands at the garden gate.
Emily greets Giselle and asks why she arrived without giving any prior notice.
Giselle claims she was simply curious about what kind of person the Duchess is.
Emily internally hopes this face-to-face meeting will resolve any past misunderstandings.
Giselle sits down abruptly, startling both Yulina and Emily with her bold behavior.
Yulina greets her politely while Giselle introduces herself with a sharp, calculating look.
Giselle offers a cold thanks for being welcomed on such short notice.
Yulina warmly says that any friend of Emily's is always welcome at her home.
Giselle smirks and insultingly asks if children were responsible for the garden's decorations.
Shocked by the blatant rudeness, Yulina asks the Marchioness to repeat herself.
Giselle laughs and calls the trees mismatched and the flower colors tacky. Giselle critiques the round table, claiming it makes seating etiquette impossible to follow.
Emily slaps her hand on the table and tells Giselle she is being harsh.
Emily defends the table as Mary adds that she wants to buy one too. The blue-haired and green-haired women defend the garden's beauty to a worried Yulina.
Giselle wonders to herself if Yulina bribed the noble ladies to side with her.
A set of decorative plates is shown in a box as Giselle scoffs.
Giselle internally dismisses the value of the gift, calling the entire situation pathetic.
Giselle asks Yulina if the Duke recently attended the Severin Festival.
Giselle questions if his attendance was motivated by the presence of Princess Echelon.
Giselle condescendingly assumes Yulina has no idea who Princess Echelon is.
Beautiful blonde princesses are shown in a vision of the kingdom of Echelon.
Giselle claims the Duke once proposed to Princess Echelon, shocking the silver-haired Duchess.
Giselle adds that he even staged a protest for her hand years ago.
Giselle dismissively shrugs and says it's all in the past since he is married.
Emily stands up angrily as Giselle mentions the Duke leaving Yulina behind.
Emily points toward the exit and demands that Giselle leave the garden immediately.
The other ladies back Emily, telling Giselle to leave for her mean comments.
Giselle scoffs and acts innocent while a guard approaches her from behind.
Lady Ray glares sternly at the increasingly annoyed Marchioness Giselle.
Lady Ray warns Giselle she will face consequences for further rudeness.
Giselle shudders as an intense, sudden chill washes over her body. Giselle huffs and storms away, claiming she has better things to gain.
Yulina looks on with concern as the Marchioness makes a hasty exit.
Emily gently takes Yulina's hand and advises her to ignore Giselle's comments. The noblewomen share personal stories about their own husbands' past romantic histories.
Yulina expresses her gratitude while internally dwelling on the princess's alleged beauty.
Emily reminds the Duchess that only their current happiness truly matters now.
Yulina's curiosity peaks as she asks about the princess's legendary appearance.
The silver-haired Duchess blushes deeply while comparing herself to the distant princess. The group loudly insists that Yulina is far more beautiful and captivating. The scene shifts to a majestic, illuminated estate during the evening festival.
Duke Theo stands alone inside the grand hall, quietly sipping red wine.
Nearby guests gossip about the Duke's rare attendance at such a public event.
Chibi-style guests excitedly plot to pitch their business ideas for the Duke's funder.
Ulysses approaches Theo to report that the priest from Perkos has arrived.
Theo turns his head sharply as he prepares to meet the religious figure.
The Duke immediately shuts down an approaching guest's attempt to speak.
Theo orders the crowd to clear out while Ulysses manages the dismissal.
Ulysses politely informs the guests that all investment proposals must go through him. Ulysses focuses on his mission to secure profitable ventures for the duchy's funds.
Ulysses organizes the crowd into a line while Theo exits the ballgar.
The grand architecture of the estate stands tall beneath a clear, starry sky.
Theo enters a secluded room where a mysterious high priest awaits him.
Perkos, the high priest, stands ready to discuss a grave and private matter. Perkos mentions rumors about Theo's past relationships while they sip for tea. The high priest demands a more significant commitment than mere verbal promises.
Theo insists that his previous statements on the matter were already definitive. Perkos demands a sacred vow that is literally bound to the Duke's life.
The Duke is visibly stunned by the priest's demand for a life vow.
Theo questions if the priest is referring to the legendary god's vow.
A hand firmly grasps the golden rope known as Daphne's cord.
Theo dismisses the need for long explanations and prepares to begin.
The glowing title for the sacred god's vow ritual appears in the light.
Ritual text explains how Daphne's cord binds the oath directly to one's soul.
Theo begins the process of wrapping the divine cord around his bare wrist.
Perkos warns that breaking this vow will result in the participant's death.
The priest instructs the Grand Duke to vow to protect the Sanctus.
Theo's intense gaze reflects his resolve to protect his wife at all costs.
Golden light erupts from the cord as it constricts painfully around Theo's arm.
Perkos calmly explains that the blood-based nature of the vow causes physical pain.
Theo clenches his fist as the divine power begins to drain his blood.
A massive surge of energy forces a pained scream from the struggling Duke.
The high priest announces that the soul-binding ritual is finally complete.
The glowing rope fades away, signifying that the vow has been forged.
Perkos praises the Duke's ability to endure such an agonizing ritual. The pair remains in the quiet room, viewed from behind a glass partition.
Perkos reveals that only the person making the vow experiences the pain.
Chibi Theo glares at the priest for making the experience so unnecessarily painful.
Theo sits across from the high priest and asks if he is ready to talk.
Perkos maintains a stern expression as he prepares to reveal the truth. Theo dismisses the basic religious texts, stating he already knows only the Sanctus can fix holy water.
Perkos cryptically confirms that that would be true if there were actually a problem with the water.
Confused, Theo listens as Perkos reveals that the holy water supply is not drying up. The high priest explains that someone is intentionally stealing the holy water.
Perkos notes that the water is being systematically stolen from multiple major temples.
Theo realizes that Perkos cannot be lying while bound by the life-risking God's vow.
Perkos explains he is investigating the motive of the thieves to better protect the Saintess.
The High Priest identifies the Bios Empire as the primary suspect in the thefts.
Theo notes he is already aware of the Empire's desire for the Saintess's power.
Perkos suggests that the massive scale of the theft implies others are involved.
Perkos asks why Theo is so certain of the Saintess's existence and how her power is stolen.
The priest notes that Theo's journey for information confirms his knowledge of her existence.
Perkos observes that Theo remained completely unfazed when hearing about the Bios Empire's schemes. Theo realizes he was being tested as Perkos confirms Theo's prior knowledge of the situation.
Theo suggests Perkos also knows her identity, but Perkos insists he must act with caution.
Perkos explains that he is under constant surveillance and cannot move freely.
A flashback shows the priest intentionally meeting with a mysterious hooded figure.
Perkos reveals he acted as bait by contacting those seeking the Saintess's power.
Approaching her directly would raise too much suspicion, so Perkos took a dangerous alternative.
Perkos ponders why the recent prophecies focus on stealing power rather than protecting the Saintess.
The priest delivers a final warning that breaking their sacred vow results in death.
As evening falls, Perkos promises to visit the Duke's estate once his investigation concludes.
Perkos mentions that divine power now resides in Theo and asks him to bless the world.
Theo scoffs at the idea of bestowing blessings after the painful ritual.
Thinking of Yulina, Theo vows to protect her regardless of the opponent he faces.
A horse-drawn carriage travels through the thick green trees of a sunlit forest.
Theo gazes out the carriage window as he continues his long journey home. The Duke notes they will reach the depths of the forest very soon.
Theo gazes at a bouquet of lilies he has placed under a protection spell.
Exhausted, Theo decides to get some sleep before switching to traveling by horseback.
In a nightmare, a young Theo screams for his mother during a blizzard.
Young Theo desperately begs his unconscious dark-haired mother to wake up in the snow. Crying, the boy tells his mother he protected the duchy and wants to go home.
The recurring dream always begins with Theo holding his mother in the freezing cold.
A foot sinks deep into the heavy snow during the relentless winter storm.
The bitter wind howls as snow blurs the vision of the struggling boy.
Theo laments that in every dream he repeatedly fails to save his mother.
He is overcome with a sense of worthlessness as he lies in the snow.
Tears stream down Theo's face as he remains trapped in the painful memory. A bright glowing orb appears in the darkness and commands Theo to wake up.
A hand twitches as the mysterious voice insists that the nightmare is no place for him.
A radiant, white-haired figure appears, worried about Theo's body being so cold.
Floating in the dark void of his mind, Theo wonders who is speaking.
Theo struggles to move or see while the glowing figure continues calling out to him.
The gentle, luminous woman tells him that he can finally stop hurting now.
The glowing spirit leans over Theo's body as they lie together in the snowy dream.
Theo feels a sudden, incredible warmth as his eyes flutter open within the dream.
Comforted by the warmth, Theo finds himself wanting to drift back into a peaceful sleep. Duke Theo wakes up in distress, covered in a cold sweat.
The black-haired man realizes he has suffered through another recurring nightmare.
Theo reflects on a mysterious, unfamiliar voice heard during his dream. He stands outside, sensing an unusual and unsettling presence nearby.
Theo calls out to verify if his butler is still nearby.
Ulysses knocks on the carriage, asking if the Duke is all right.
Theo calls for Ulysses as he prepares to exit the carriage.
The Duke emerges looking pale and deeply troubled by a discovery.
Ulysses expresses concern, but Theo demands he address a specific problem.
Theo presents a bouquet of lilies that have all mysteriously withered. Ulysses is confused because preservation magic should have kept them alive.
They discuss how returning south immediately will cause a week's delay.
Theo feels guilty about potentially disappointing Yuna with the dead flowers. The blonde butler suggests there might be another way to succeed.
Ulysses whispers a secret he overheard at the Magic Stone banquet.
A tall stone tower stands silent under the bright full moon.
Yuna flops onto her bed, exhausted after a very busy day.
The silver-haired duchess celebrates finishing the garden decorations at the manor.
Yuna takes pride in having replaced all the carpets and curtains.
The staff notes how much more alive the manor feels now. She rolls onto her side, hoping Theo will appreciate her efforts.
Yuna remembers she was gifted a special night cream to try. She recalls being told to use the cream before going to bed.
A memory shows the maid, Mayrin, offering the gift to Yuna.
Mayrin explains the cream will make the Duchess's skin glow overnight.
The maid thanks Yuna for teaching her about sincerity over status.
Yuna expresses her own gratitude to Mayrin for her constant support.
The Duchess admits she wouldn't have attended the party without her.
Mayrin wonders if the cream was necessary for such a dazzling woman.
Yuna worries about the cost, but the maid insists it is fine. Back in the present, Yuna begins applying the white night cream.
A sudden knock at the door interrupts Yuna's evening skincare routine.
Yuna is surprised when Ulysses announces his arrival at such a late hour.
She opens the door with her face entirely covered in white cream.
Ulysses looks completely drained and exhausted as he greets the Duchess.
The butler explains they arrived early because Theo rushed the journey home.
Ulysses stares in stunned silence at Yuna's white masked and glowing face.
Yuna mentions that she is trying out the gift from Mayrin.
Ulysses questions the maid's finances while Yuna asks about her husband. Ulysses informs her that the Duke is already asleep for the night. Yuna resolves to look her best for Theo tomorrow morning instead. Ulysses reveals that an important female guest will arrive tomorrow evening.
The Grand Duchess is curious to know who the visitor is.
A heavy silence falls as Yuna processes the identity of the guest.
Ulysses explains the guest needs attention, but Theo will handle everything.
The butler bows and prepares to depart for his own rest.
Walking away, Ulysses struggles to remember a detail he forgot to mention. The chibi butler decides the forgotten detail is likely nothing very important. Standing alone, Yuna begins to dwell on the name of the princess. Yuna wonders if the arriving guest is actually Theo's first love.
A ship sails across the shimmering water under a bright sky.
Horse-drawn carriages and supplies fill the bustling harbor at the docks. Ulysses sighs about his lack of sleep while Duke Theo remains stoic.
The butler shouts that the Duke witnessed the manor's state as well.
Theo looks pensive and remains silent after his butler's outburst.
A flashback reveals the pair admiring the vibrant garden the night before.
Sensing a presence, the black-haired man calls out to his hidden card.
Khan appears and reports that he is following his given orders. The Shadow reports that the Grand Duchess worked hard on the matter.
A moonlit garden stands quiet, featuring a large and ornate glass greenhouse.
The guard mentions that Yuna has improved her chestnut pie recipe. Duke Theo commands his Shadow to ensure he never sees Giselle again. Theo tells Ulysses to inform Yuna that he went straight to bed.
He orders the butler to dismiss the rumors regarding the Echelon princess.
Ulysses is shocked and asks why the Duke won't tell her himself.
Looking at the dead lilies, Theo notes that they have all withered.
He clenches his fist, determined not to return home empty-handed.
Theo tells his butler to prepare for the docks at dawn.
Ulysses sighs, dreading another day without sleep as the sun rises.
An envoy arrives to deliver a message from the kingdom of Echelon.
The black-haired man asks for the item the messenger has brought. A white box opens to reveal a sparkling, crystalline magic stone lily.
Ulysses declares the exquisite gift to be worthy of a royal errand.
The messenger explains the item was a tribute for the imperial family. Sniffing the flower, Theo dismisses it because it lacks a natural scent.
The chibi butler explodes in anger over his master's extreme pickiness.
He screams about the high cost of the scentless magic stone flowers.
The chibi messenger quickly departs, hoping they care for the princess.
Narrative text announces the scene has shifted to the Brown residence estate.
Two noble women gossip about the Duke rushing home for his honeymoon phase.
A group of friends gathers for an outdoor tea party in the garden.
Yuna looks downcast while the brown-haired Emily watches her with concern. Emily announces that Princess Echelon will be arriving at the manor tonight. The noblewomen react with wide-eyed shock and outrage at the sudden news.
A portrait of the blonde princess appears above a troubled, silver-haired Yuna.
The scene highlights the glamorous blonde princess who is arriving at the estate. Yuna stands in her blue gown, looking pale and deeply distressed.
Emily slams the table, furiously asking why the princess is coming.
She explains that the guest is someone who requires very close attention. Emily adds that the visiting princess plans to stay for 2 weeks. The blue-haired woman is horrified that a romantic rival is moving in. Yuna smiles sadly and insists that Theo must have his own reasons. Emily stands up with a look of pure, burning fury on her face. She thinks about how a homewrecker is threatening Yelena's fresh chance at love.
The brown-haired woman commands everyone at the table to get up immediately.
Emily declares that a romantic rival is picking a fight with them. The noblewomen realize the gravity of the situation with determined shock. The friends begin making urgent plans for dresses and jewels to help Yuna.
The silver-haired duchess looks on in surprise as her friends rally together.
Emily vows to show Yuna how to deal with a romantic rival properly. Emily smiles intensely and vows to make their rival tremble at the thought of the Phoenix Principality. Two noblewomen stand up and eagerly ask Emily to teach them how to help defend the Duchess's marriage. Emily is pleased by their reliability as Eunice stands in the background looking completely lost. Emily suggests teaching Yelena how to naturally knock over tea to sabotage their unwanted guest.
The silver-haired duchess looks nervous and unsure as she reluctantly agrees to the lessons.
Back at the manor, the black-haired Duke Theo stands in his office preparing the gift. He opens a white ornate box to reveal a shimmering magic stone lily. Theo sighs in relief, hoping that Yuna will be pleased with the gift. A knock at the door interrupts Theo's thoughts as he looks toward the entrance. The door opens as Rei, a woman with reddish-brown hair, enters looking stern. A chibi Theo asks the woman why she is looking at him with such disdain.
Rei dismisses his claim that she is looking at him like he is a buck.
The woman informs him that the Duchess will return for dinner, much to Theo's surprise. Theo prepares to go pick her up himself, but Rei tells him it is unnecessary. Rei commands the Duke to stay and wait for the princess instead of meeting his wife. Theo wonders if Rei lost her fear after leaving her post as a knight. Standing in his office, Theo asks Rei if there is something she is unhappy about. Rei shouts that Yuna is the one who is unhappy, causing Theo to recoil. The woman accuses the Duke of ignoring his wife while she waited for him. Rei declares that she is deeply disappointed in how the Duke has treated his wife. The reddish-brown-haired woman turns her back on Theo and exits the grand office. Theo stands in stunned silence, realizing Yuna thinks he intentionally avoided her. The Duke panics, fearing Yuna believes his absence was due to failing to get flowers.
A full moon hangs in the sky above the manor as evening begins.
Dressed in his finest uniform, Theo waits anxiously by a bouquet of yellow roses. A blonde man with glasses informs Theo that the Grand Duchess is approaching.
Theo panics and wonders if getting on his knees will earn him forgiveness. A stylish white heel steps onto the floor, announcing the arrival of the Duchess.
The hem of a lavish red gown sweeps the floor as Yuna enters.
Theo considers fleeing to the south before Yuna calls out his name. Yuna appears looking absolutely radiant in her ornate red gown, dazzling her husband. Staring with a heavy blush, the Duke wonders if he has actually died.
Yuna smiles and compliments the Duke on how handsome he looks today. Theo remains in a daze, convinced he is in the afterlife following her praise. He is overwhelmed by her radiance, certain she must be a literal angel.
Yuna wonders if he only dressed up because the visiting princess is coming.
She reminds herself to stay calm and follow the plan her friends taught her. The silver-haired Duchess places a gloved hand on the Duke's chest to speak.
Yuna mentions having a suggestion, causing Theo's heart to race and his face to redden.
Yuna explains that she heard an important foreign guest is arriving soon.
Theo struggles for composure as he confirms that the princess will be arriving.
The silver-haired woman leans closer, determined to follow her friend's tactics.
Theo is frozen in utter shock after hearing the Duchess's unexpected proposal.
The black-haired man's face flushes deeper as he processes the implication of her words.
Theo imagines Yuna in bed, wondering if she just asked to sleep together. Accompanied by imaginary cherubs, a blissful Theo is convinced he is in heaven.
The Duke nearly faints from happiness, much to the silver-haired woman's confusion.
Yuna's perspective reveals she suggested sharing a room for appearances to make him happy.
Yuna is actually trembling with nerves, wondering why Theo seems so unbothered.
She explains they shouldn't let a foreign princess know they use separate rooms. Theo realizes something and confirms that Yuna is definitely right about it.
Yuna agrees and decides to have Marin move her belongings later.
Ulysses enters the room to announce the arrival of Princess Letitia. The Duchess prepares herself to follow the sabotage tactics her friends caught.
Yuna imagines acting scornful toward the arriving princess at every turn.
The silver-haired woman plans to criticize every single move the princess makes. Theo blushes intensely when Yuna grabs his arm, noting how soft she is.
A blonde princess arrives and formally greets the Grand Duke and Duchess.
The visitor introduces herself as Letitia, leaving Yuna in a state of shock. Princess Letitia thanks the Duke for the comfortable travel arrangements he provided.
Letitia stands before the couple in the middle of the grand hall.
The blonde princess has vibrant green eyes and wears a frilled pink dress.
Narrative text highlights the unexpected arrival of Princess Letitia of Echelon.
Yuna regains her composure and introduces herself to the young princess.
Letitia is awestruck, calling Yuna an angel descended from the heavens.
Theo is impressed by Letitia's judgment while Yuna asks about her age.
The blonde princess cheerfully reveals that she has just turned 11.
Yuna is stunned and can barely process that Letitia is only 11. Realizing Theo was engaged 5 years ago, Yuna accuses him of proposing to a child. A panicked Theo stammers that it must have been a different princess.
Letitia steps forward and confirms she was indeed the one engaged to him.
Yuna is horrified by the implications while Theo desperately denies the misunderstanding.
Theo insists there were reasons while Letitia backs up his claim.
Letitia explains that her kingdom possesses exceptional gemstone crafting skills.
She recounts how the Duke wanted those skills, leading to a proposed alliance.
Letitia admits she had no intention to marry and understood Theo's rejection. Letitia reveals Theo proposed to her specifically because she was too young to marry.
Her father's fury ended the marriage talk, letting the engagement naturally fade.
This specific situation birthed the long-standing rumor about the Duke's first love.
Letitia notes the rumor protected her small nation from being preyed upon. Yuna apologizes for her curiosity, but Letitia insists it was perfectly natural.
The young princess smiles, happy to have cleared up the misunderstanding. Yuna is struck by how mature the 11-year-old girl seems to be.
Yuna notes that children her age usually just run around and play. Princess Letitia lets out a small, tired sigh. At dinner, the trio exchanges pleasantries as they prepare to eat their meal. Theo serves Yuna a roll, and she smiles while thanking her husband. The young princess watches the couple intently as they begin their dinner.
Letitia stares as the black-haired Duke takes a sip of his wine.
Yuna continues eating her dinner, unaware of the young girl's scrutiny. Letitia looks at the Duchess with a deep blush on her face. The blonde girl looks flustered while watching Yuna eat her meal. Yuna notices and encourages the princess to eat more comfortably. Letitia smiles and claims she is fine, though Yuna remains skeptical. Theo places a plate of meat in front of Yuna, urging her to eat.
Yuna offers Letitia pre-cut food, suggesting it might be easier for her.
Yuna claims Theo likes pre-cut food too, leaving him extremely confused. Yuna winks and a delighted Theo immediately offers to cut everyone's food. Letitia explains that her nanny is here, but her family remains abroad. Letitia clarifies that it was her sister who attended the Southern Festival.
Yuna observes Letitia and wonders about her sister's appearance.
Letitia clarifies her sister's marital status while Yuna expresses understanding.
Letitia explains she is visiting for an academy field study. Theo notes that academy students visit the duchy every year.
The blonde princess confirms her purpose is studying Mitterrain.
Theo notices that Yuna is barely eating her dinner tonight.
He wonders if Yuna is worried about Letitia's dinner experience.
Letitia is startled and reassures them that the food is delicious.
Yuna explains travel fatigue to Theo and offers the princess encouragement.
Yuna offers fresh fruit, but the young princess politely declines.
Theo watches the two women with a quiet, thoughtful expression.
Night settles over the manor as Yuna begins a conversation.
Yuna enthusiastically praises Letitia's cuteness and poise to her husband. Theo acknowledges that the princess is exceptionally mature for her age.
Yuna questions Theo's fondness for children while he admires her.